Tick-tock, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. Look at this false prophet right here. Super duper cool, awesome. Says 17 minutes late is my bet. Well, last time I checked my watch here, you're wrong. It is not 17 minutes late. So in your face, you've been humiliated. Oh, look at this one. Look at this one. I bid 22 minutes late. Ha! Wrong. False prophets everywhere. False prophets all over the place. Hey, how's everyone doing?
You guys David was pulling a Crocodile Dundee. I say, it is such and such a time.
By looking at the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
First he looked at her watch without her looking.
No, he looked at his buddy's watch. It had his buddy Wally or whatever his name is. Yeah, and his buddy looked at his watch, and then he goes up and looks around at the sun in front of her, and he goes, about 3:45. She's like, oh, it's right on. Funny. Yeah, guys. So, oh yeah, we could have been on time today, but someone sent me something. We've got the clips which Jai shared on X about Rabbi Tovia Singer and what he thinks about the Free Palestine protests and so on. But right before we went live, someone sent me a video about Tovia Singer saying some very, very nice things, very nice things about Islam. So, guys, we have this really, really interesting situation here where the Dawa guys, they're running to Christians or anyone else saying, help us against the Zionist Jews, right? But then they're going to Zionist Jews and saying, help us attack the Trinity and help us attack Christianity. And this is it's kind of a weird situation, because I have no problem with people who agree with other people saying, okay, yeah, I agree with you on this point. You are factually correct on this point. I've said a million times, if I'm in a room with an atheist and a Muslim, and the question is, was the universe created? I'm going to agree with the Muslim. I agree with Muslims that the universe was created by God. I agree with Muslims that God has sent prophets into the world and God has revealed scriptures, and that Jesus is the Word of God, and that Jesus is the Messiah, and that Jesus performed miracles. We agree on these things. And so no problem agreeing with people when you actually agree with people. And there's this other issue where you can point to critics, you can draw attention to what critics say, but your point is even critics agree with me on this issue. So when we're talking about historical evidence for, let's say, Jesus' death by crucifixion, very common to point out, hey, even atheist scholars agree with us, agnostic scholars agree with us, Jewish scholars agree with us, scholars across the board agree with us that Jesus died by crucifixion. They consider it a fact of history. So sometimes we'll point out things like that. But that's all very different from like constantly running to people because you can't like make your case or do whatever you're trying to do yourself, and you feel like completely inadequate. And so you run to other people or other groups to try and help you because you just can't do whatever it is you need to do. And hey, we have hey, check it out. We got Ash here. Hey, Ash, know you got some things to handle, but if you wanted to jump in, you could. If you're just sitting around, you wanted to jump in, you can totally jump in. I didn't want to ask you because I know you got some stuff. I know you got some stuff these days that you're working on. So, but anyway, if you wanted to jump in, you could totally jump in. But anyway, so yeah, you've got Muslims who will say, we hate these guys, we hate the Zionists, we want to wipe them out, we want to destroy them. And then they'll go to the exact same people that they say they want to destroy and wipe out and say, could you help us attack the Trinity? And you're kind of showing where your priorities are. And so very, I don't know, really, really weird, interesting situation. But it doesn't seem like, I mean, why would you be going to a Jewish rabbi to say, help us attack the idea that the Trinity, that God is a Trinity in the Old Testament? It's like Muslims, like you guys don't have the scriptures. You guys don't have the Old Testament. That's supposedly revelation according to your religion too. And I have to point out that when you're pointing out that critics might agree with you on something. So, for example, just going back to the one I mentioned, Bart Ehrman, all the Gerd Ludemann, the Jesus Seminar guys, all these like non-Christian scholars agree with us on Jesus' death by crucifixion. When we draw attention to them, we're pointing out, hey, someone who's not in favor of our case is agreeing with part of our case. And so just in case you thought we only believed in Jesus' death by crucifixion because we're biased in favor of Christianity, okay, here are people who are not biased in favor of Christianity. They don't believe in Christianity. Many of them don't believe in God, and yet they're agreeing with us. So even people who aren't biased in favor of our position agree with us on this issue. That can be relevant. If the evidence convinces even your critics, then that's usually relevant to point out. But that's not what's going on here with the Dawa bros and the Dawa girls going to Rabbi Tovia Singer. It's not, oh, look, if you thought we're just biased against the Trinity, let's go to some people who aren't biased to show that they agree with us. No, you're going to rabbis who also don't like the doctrine of the Trinity and who also attack the doctrine of the Trinity, and then saying, so let's get your input on this. Yeah, we know both of your groups reject the Trinity. We know that. Yeah, we get that. So anyway, it's just a weird situation where Muslims don't apparently feel adequate to respond on their own, and therefore they're running to a Zionist rabbi who says some very interesting things. Anthony, we're going to check out some clips, but what are your initial thoughts on all this stuff before we jump into some things?
Well, one thing is, in addition to what you just said, is Tovia's ability to help Korra here only goes so far, which isn't far at all for a number of reasons. But there's an initial issue here for Korra. Obviously, Tovia Singer rejects the New Testament. And so the New Testament is irrelevant to a proper interpretation of the Old. He doesn't think it was inspired. He doesn't think it's from God. But Korra, as a Muslima, believes, or is supposed to believe, per her own God's injunctions, that the gospel was given to Jesus, that the Jews and Christians possessed it at the time of Muhammad, and they were to judge by it, and Muhammad himself was to go and ask Jews and Christians to quell his doubts if he had any, and the Muslims were also told the same thing in Surah 16. So what was good for Muhammad was good for the Ummah as well. Go and ask the Jews and Christians. So let's just suppose that Tovia Singer gives an interpretation that she likes because it agrees with what she wants to conclude, but it's at variance with what we find in the New Testament. Tovia hasn't helped her deal with that problem. She still has to deal with that as a Muslim. And there's a number of texts that will come up today that the New Testament has something to say about. Now, I'm going to principally argue back against Tovia on the basis of the Old Testament because I also want to engage him, and I recognize he doesn't accept the New Testament. But it is the case that there are New Testament teachings that have bearing for those who recognize it as a revelation from God upon the interpretation of the Old Testament. So that's an initial thing. But, another thing that occurred to me as I was watching this is it's like two poor people going to each other to bail them out of an enormous debt. Neither one of them have sufficient funds to deal with this issue. Tovia is going to show us that. He's going to speak a good game and all that sort of thing. But I'll show that, what Tovia is doing is he's capitalizing on Korra's ignorance. She's an easy sell, and she doesn't really have the tools to push back with. That's why it was kind of ironic. I believe it's his version. I think it's, it's the same video, but I think on his channel it says something like Muslim presses rabbi on the Trinity or something. I'm thinking, presses the rabbi? I'll pay to see this. What in the world is she going to say that really offers significant pushback? It's probably going to be like, it's like somebody going up to a wall and pushing it and falling over, kind of thing. There's nothing that really affects or impacts the wall. It's just really, somebody that wants to fall over or something along those lines. So, and I only got through like the first 15 to 20 minutes, and I mean, I don't know that we'll get past that. Depends how fast you make me move along, because like just the first thing they deal with, I could literally think of 20 different things to say in response to what Tovia tried to argue. So,
Well, I actually haven't seen any of this, so I don't know what he's going to try to argue. So I have no clue what you're talking about right now. But there is someone who needs attention as usual. Oh, shocker! It's Issa. Shocker, shocker, everyone, shocker. Hey, Issa, how you doing?
I'm good. I actually know Rabbi Tovia Singer, so it's kind of funny that this popped up. So it's kind
Oh,
of cool.
really? So we've got a fan of Rabbi Tovia Singer. We've got a Jewish. Here's what's amazing. We're sitting here literally talking about how weird it is for the Dawa guys and gals to be going to Rabbi Tovia Singer, because there seems to be some conflict ordinarily there. And then we've got Isa, the Jewish Muslim, coming in to say, you see, we can all be one. These two ideologies are one in my own brain, so they can be together in the world as well. Ruining our case, man. Ruining our case. So, hey, Issa, you heard of this? So you said you're familiar with this guy? Hey, why am I so much?
I met his father too, and I know his brother-in-law. I know quite a few, probably his sister too. I know quite a few members of his family.
Oh, yeah?
I saw them because a lot of his family's in New Jersey, which is close to where I'm at.
Big fans, eh? Big fan. Big fan.
Hmm.
Hey. All right, guys. Let's go ahead and check out this is why we're a little late today. Where there's almost always a reason why we're late. There's normally something that pops up last second or something like that we're like, oh, want to bring that in. But want to check out this clip here. I'm sure Issa will be a big fan here. Let me see exactly where we have to go in this. Matter of fact, I'll just start off at the beginning. So this is Rabbi Tovia Singer's show, and Muslim has a question for him. But let's check this out.
Dear Rabbi Singer, I have watched on previous videos of yours and have had a question. I'm Egyptian by origin. My uncle died by an Israeli sniper, and I have had a long time a bad attitude towards Jews. Meanwhile, I have come to the conclusion that Jews and Muslims have more together in common than against each other. This thinking I have largely because of your wise use of words and your explanations about Christianity and Islam. My question is as follows: do you, as a religious Jew, really consider that there is a chance one day to have a serious and fair relationship with Arabs in Palestine and Israel? Can we one day live in peace together without sacrificing our beliefs and values? I wish this is possible very much, and I'm looking forward to your answer. So there you go.
Hey, everyone, check that out. So the Egyptian Muslim, asked a question, and the question was, hey, my uncle, I think he said, was killed by an IDF soldier, and so I've had lots of hostility against Jews, but I've been listening to you attack Christianity, and I'm thinking we might be on the same page here, and maybe we could be united in the future and get along much better. What do you think about this? So let's go ahead and check out Rabbi Tovia Singer's response. And Issa's just going, yes, that's the great way to unite.
Wow, that's a very thoughtful question. Just a thought passed through my mind that if my family had been in an Arab country, a Muslim country, during the late spring of 1944, rather than in a Christian country, Hungary, they would have survived and the Nazis would not have murdered them. Virtually my entire family was murdered, including my great-grandfather, after whom I was named. As it turns out, Jews and
As
Muslims
it turns out,
live side by side for since the advent of the Islamic faith, which began in the 7th century. It was not always perfect. There were some very difficult times. There were
You think?
such times, but even when the times were difficult, it wasn't uniquely difficult for Jews. It was just difficult for the Muslim country that the Jews were living in, but Jews were not singled out as opposed to Christians and so on.
I think you're wrong, Rabbi. I think you're wrong. Did you guys just catch that? He said, "Hey, even when times are bad, it wasn't because we were Jews and Islam has any particular hostility towards Jews. It was just, they had the Muslim country might have had a problem with unbelievers in general, or the people of the book in general. So it wasn't geared towards us specifically." I'll just take this hadith right here. So this is Sahih Muslim. Someone put it up here. Sahih Muslim 2922. Check it out. So this is the one where it's narrated that Abu Hurairah said, "The Messenger of Allah said, the hour will not begin until the Muslims fight the Jews, and the Muslims will kill them, and until a Jew hides behind a rock or a tree, and the rock or tree will say, 'O Muslim, ya Muslim, O slave of Allah, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him. Except the garket, a thorny tree, for it is one of the trees of the Jews.'" All right, so you've got that. Now, he could be thinking of stuff like this. Surah 98, verse 6. "Verily those who disbelieve in the religion of Islam, the Quran, and Prophet Muhammad, from among the people of the scriptures, Jews and Christians, and al-Mushrikun, will abide in the fire of hell. They are the worst of creatures." So there it's calling Jews the worst of creatures, but it's also calling Christians the worst of creatures, and al-Mushrikun, those are people who associate partners with Allah. And so we're kind of in the same ballpark there. We're all the worst of creatures. And you have this hadith. Jabir bin Abdullah said, Umar bin al-Khattab said that he heard the Messenger of Allah say, "I shall certainly expel the Jews and Christians from the Arabian Peninsula until I leave only Muslims there." So there you have it. It's Jews and Christians who are going to be expelled from the Arabian Peninsula to make room for just Muslims and so on. So you do have passages which you do have teachings which are geared towards Jews and Christians, or Jews, Christians, and polytheists, but you don't exactly have things like Sahih Muslim about other groups, right? That's Jews. That's Jews. And so the idea that there's no extra added hostility towards Jews, I got to disagree with the rabbi here. But let's see where he's going with this.
The point I want to make is I don't want to paint a picture of absolute utopia, but Jews really did get along very well in Islamic countries by and large. And
it wasn't a utopia, but it was really, really good, guys.
Faiths are strikingly similar on our core beliefs. In fact, whenever I teach about the Jewish faith to Muslim audiences, the Muslims are always just shocked when they're always going, "Wow, that's what we believe. Wow, that's the words we use," and so on. They're just shocked. The similarities stun them. Our faith, our tawhid, that's the foundation of Judaism.
Y'all catch this? Everyone catch this? He starts using Islamic words. He says, "Our faith, our tawhid." Isa's loving this. He's like, "Yes, this is correct. We have the same tawhid."
Wait, so I have to point something out here. Now, Tovia is basically playing off of many people's ignorance of the fact that the Judaism that he subscribes to is an overhaul of Rabbinic Judaism, which was an overhaul of Second Temple Judaism. What I mean is the post-Christian Judaism of the rabbis that crafted things like the Talmud and so forth, they were reacting against Christianity. We'll have more to say about that in a moment. But they had to make all kinds of adjustments because what Jews had believed prior to that was problematic in light of the things that were being said by Christians. And, of course, there were radical differences. The temple was destroyed. The priesthood was gone. All the things that were associated with that. What do you do now, right? You can't keep half the laws of the Mosaic system without the temple. So, what gives here? What do we do? What do we do with these 613 laws if we can't keep half of them at least? Well, those rabbis did a good bit of tinkering. Well, later, Maimonides came along and did a good bit of tinkering himself. And Maimonides does us a double favor here because, number one, he's a good example of somebody that explodes Tovia's myth of a almost utopia here, because there's a bunch of debate among Jews to this day whether Maimonides was a converso. There's another term for this. I can't remember exactly offhand what it is, but a converso is somebody who pretends to have converted to Islam in order to escape persecution. And it's well known that many Jews during the time of Maimonides living under Islamic rule did this. It's often brought up how this happened in Christian countries, and we can grant that. Certainly the Catholic Church had done all sorts of things, making it desirable for people to escape persecution by feigning conversion to Christianity. They also made it hard for Jews that actually legitimately converted to these different religions to persuade people that they were real converts. But because it was such a big phenomena, and it's pretty clear that Maimonides' family did this, there's a lot of debate among Jews about whether Maimonides did this. So my point here is just to say, yeah, so far from a utopia that a Jew would be willing to pretend he's not a Jew but a Muslim in order to escape persecution. But here's the more significant thing. The Judaism that Maimonides crafted, which Jews like Tovia now uphold, was a Judaism that was largely influenced by Islam. This is pointed out in the literature. You read the biographies of Maimonides, or you just read his works. Anybody who knows Islam, reading the works of Maimonides, can tell, hey, wait a minute, that just sounds like he picked that up from, Ibn Sina or Al-Farabi or somebody. In fact, just so you know, this is not just me saying this, there's an article that appeared that anybody can find online. It was in a 2009 issue of the Washington Post. It was in a book review section. This is from a Jewish scholar named Shaul Magid, no friend of Christianity. But it's about a book that was written on Maimonides, and he's referring to this review. He calls it The Great Islamic Rabbi. So notice what he's calling Maimonides, the Islamic Rabbi. Now, I won't read the whole review, but at various points he says things like, we know that many in Maimonides' social class feigned conversion to pretend to be Muslims to escape persecution. But then he says later, his entire worldview was influenced with Islamic methods, ideas, and ideology. Then he says later in the review, he says, the notion of principles or pillars of faith that Maimonides gave Jews their 13 articles of faith, they didn't have something like that before. He says the very notion of this comes from Islam. And then he says, as he goes on, that specific articles, including the first, the second, and the third, reflect the influence of Islamic thinkers such as Al-Farabi, Ibn Sina, and Ibn Tumar, founder of the Almohad movement. So my point here is just to say, how surprised should we be if Tovia, who's downstream from Maimonides, drinking everything Maimonides said like cool water, that his ideas look like Islamic ideas, when after all, Maimonides was himself picking these things up from Muslims. And you can read throughout Maimonides where he's constantly contradicting and trying to justify why he contradicts earlier rabbinic sages. So there's nothing surprising here, nothing remarkable. It tells us nothing about the religion of the Old Testament. It tells us something about a very late development in post-Christian Judaism.
Let's hear a little bit about this Tawheed here?
They're always just shocked when they're always going, wow, that's what we believe. Wow, that's the words we use, and so on. They're just shocked. The similarities stun them. Our faith, our Tawheed, that's the foundation of Judaism and Islam. And Tawheed is not a Jewish word. That's an Arabic word. And it refers to our mutual belief in an absolute oneness of God, and there is no other God but the true God. This is a central core statement that every Jew says every single day. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4. And every Muslim says each and every day, La ilaha illallah, there is no God but the true God. The core commandment in Judaism is to give tzedakah, to give charity. In Islam, that's a core tenet of the faith, and that is to give tzedakah, quite literally. It's this virtually identical word.
Wow, look at this, see? I mean, it's basically exactly the same, according to Rabbi Tovia Singer. What's the problem? I guess Christians have just been keeping these poor guys apart.
In fact, I live...
I don't know, he's looking at that guy like Duck Lips and Muhammad Hijab when they were sitting on the couch.
Yep, best buddies.
I'm fortunate to live in the largest Islamic country in the world. Muslims and Jews, my congregation and Muslim congregations get together to give charity. Moreover, the aspects of Christianity that are most offensive to both Muslims and Jews are identical. Almost all of Christians believe in the doctrine of the Trinity, which is a not just idol worship, but it is the most odious form of idol worship, because in Arabic the word is a shirk. A shirk means really an association or a partnership, and we have a corresponding term which is called a shutfis. The Quran is very clear that, in fact, in the 4th surah states that if someone engages in an association, meaning he believes in the true God, but he also adds another God onto that, so that person, if that person, of course, doesn't repent, that person has absolutely no place in the world to come. As it turns out, if you look...
You get that? So he's just going point by point, showing that Muslims and Jews are basically the exact same religion here. Let's fast forward a little bit, because I haven't seen this, but I was told to go to around 1330 for some more here. So you can get the kind of gist of what he's saying there.
I have never, and when I lived in Jerusalem, I taught classes for Arabs who were all Sunni. And I have never, those who know me know I have a lot of Muslim friends, lots. I have never heard the words from a Muslim in my life that when something remotely resembling, Mahmoud Abbas, sure, he's a great guy and he really does represent me. I have heard the most, I have heard Arabs pouring their guts out by how corrupt they feel, and so on the other side. I don't know many people who, for instance, think that many Israelis who think that Tzipi Livni represents them. I don't think any of that is going to happen. Everything is possible, but I don't think it will happen. And I'm going to say this, and
say it.
I hope no one will be angry, but I think if someone thinks it will, it's just delusional. And I believe that the only way that Jews and Arabs and peoples of all nations will celebrate together and dance in the streets of Jerusalem together with love and harmony and of one accord is with the coming of Mashiach, and no other way. I believe that. Mahmoud Abbas is in the 10th year of a 4-year term. It's just not happening. People who think that way are not living in reality. There's a lot of pain, there's a lot of hurt, plenty of it to go around, and sort of trying to dredge up, what this happened, none of that means anything. No one's going to give up Jerusalem. It's just not happening. So we have a God, and there's only one God, and His glory will be manifest throughout the world. And that's when peace will grip the world. That's when lo yisa goy al goy cherev v'lo yilmudu oid milchama. Nation will not lift up sword against nation, neither will they learn of war anymore. That will only happen in the Messianic age. This long, bitter darkness, please God, will come to an end. And one other point should be made, and that is when Mashiach comes, when the Messiah comes, and please, it'll be quickly in our time, there will not be many religions. There will only be one religion in the world. We're told this by all the prophets. I mean, there is no theme that's more central to Scripture than that the enemies of God will be destroyed. These are Gog and Magog, which appears in the Quran and so on.
I have to say, this is interesting because he's saying, on the one hand, he's saying, our religions are so similar. They're just right, point by point, the same thing, basically. So, yeah, it makes no sense that we don't get along. But then later on, he's saying, as far as like here we are in the real world, us celebrating together and living together in harmony and so on, that's only going to happen when the Messiah comes. But you got a problem. According to Islam, Jesus is the Messiah. Jesus is the one who's returning. And Rabbi Tovia Singer doesn't believe that. So I don't know. So what does he actually think there? That he either matter of fact, he would have to think this, that the Messiah is going to come. It's not going to be Jesus. And then Muslims are going to just say, oh, okay, we were wrong about Jesus. But they can't say that, right? So they would, because that would be to renounce Islam. So I guess he's going to say that Muslims are going to renounce Islam when the Messiah comes, and then they'll all be together with Jews. But from a Muslim perspective, from the Muslim perspective, Jesus is going to return, and it says he's going to abolish the jizya, meaning he's going to tell everyone they have to convert or die. So everyone's going to have to convert to Islam. So apparently, what's this mean, right? He's saying, no, in this world, no, it doesn't look like we're ever going to get along in total peace and harmony. But when the Messiah comes, what? It sounds like Rabbi Tovia believes all the Muslims are going to renounce Islam and just be part of, just follow this Messiah. Whereas from an Islamic perspective, all the Jews are going to be told to convert to Islam or die. And so, I don't know. It seems like strange bedfellows to me, guys. Seems like strange bedfellows. How can all of this live together in one person's head? Oh, hi, Isa.
I think there's a lot of arguments that were made here that I think are really interesting. He talked about, like, the history. I think we're in a different age. We're in the age of the nation state versus the age of empire. So he's right in a sense that, like, the conditions were better, but if you took the conditions now, they would be pretty horrendous. Basically, people who weren't Muslims were like second-class citizens within the Muslim empire. Like, it's kind of irrefutable. That's just the way it was. They had to wear different kinds of clothing. They were viewed differently. Of course, in my position, that's a deeply problematic position. But most empires did this, where people had second-class citizenship. Rambam actually talks about it in his works. Rabbi Moses Maimonides, he talks about the difficulties of living under the Islamic Empire, because at that time there were different empires, so there were different conditions based on each empire, but under his conditions they were quite difficult. And he talks about that. He kind of takes a position similar to what Rabbi Tovia was saying, where he takes the position that he's like, well, the Christians have good character, at least in this area, but their belief is wrong. The Muslims have the correct belief, but their behavior is wrong. It was something similar to that kind of parallel. That was kind of what he was saying. Yeah, it's very difficult. I think the idea is, when he's quoting Isaiah 2:4, which is actually my favorite biblical verse, by the way. It's funny that that's the one I brought up before. This idea is that he, and it's different. And I really feel, empathy and compassion for his position, because I agree with him too about having peace in the Middle East. It's a very difficult time, particularly now between different traditions, particularly between Jews and Muslims. And he has this wish for peace, but he's like, well, only there has to, like, to really truly have peace, you need this kind of intermediary force. And I think that is kind of what he's appealing to. He's like, this Messiah will come and bring peace for us in this land. And that's kind of a hope and a vision. And I think it is an interesting question that you're bringing up, like, who will that Messiah be? What does that Messiah look like? And you're right. It's like, well, who exactly is Jesus? This is the question. I think this is the big question of the hour. Who is Jesus, right? Is Jesus going to be a Muslim who puts on a kufi and prays 5 times a day? Is that Jesus? Is Jesus, the Son of God, the Messiah? Is Jesus just like a kind of a Jewish prophet?
Will the Mahdi wear a beanie, yes or no?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I think maybe we have a contender of the Mahdi, but like, I think these are the questions. And I think, Brother Anthony hits a lot of really solid points on this. And it's a very complex situation. It's a very difficult situation. And I don't know if the answers aren't necessarily easy, but I think that's the big question here. If you're talking about like the end times eschatology, who is Jesus? And that's the question. If Jesus is a Muslim, I mean, is that Jesus anymore? That's a question, Like, if Jesus' identity is being a Jewish person and having these Jewish behaviors, would it then be this person who puts on a kufi, is speaking Arabic? Is that Jesus still, or is that some other kind of entity? And I think that's a question one could arise in that, and it's an important thing to consider.
Let's check out. We had. So that's when Rabbi Tovia is talking to Muslims. It's, hey, we have basically the same religion. It's the Christians. It's the Christians who have the problem here, and we should be united against their beliefs. Then we had Jai point out here. On the other hand, when he's talking to other people about the whole Palestinian situation, we'll see what he says. But Jai posted, new Dawa trend. Find a rabbi who hates Jesus as much as you do, celebrates Gazans screaming and crying, and gets the popcorn to enjoy it, because that will really own the Christians. Very pro-Palestinian, very pro-Jesus. But Jai posted a little video compilation. And I've seen others, because lots of Muslims have interviewed him. Ijaz interviewed him. So we got Korra. That's what we're about to go through. We had Ijaz. I think Orthodox Lips, but lots of Muslims love having him on to go after the doctrine of the Trinity, or to go after some aspect of Christianity, and they view him as an ally, and they say, yeah, follow his channel to learn the truth about the problem with all these Christian views. And very, very strange, especially given what the Quran says. The Quran is telling Jews, hey, you need to believe in Jesus, right? You need to believe in Jesus. You need to stop rejecting Jesus as the Messiah. But let's go ahead and check out this little video clip that Jai posted.
Jesus is not the Messiah.
Okay, perfect. And today we are going to be having an interview with Rabbi Tovia Singer. How are you doing today?
Let them cry. When the enemy is screaming and wailing, that means that we are safe.
Walaikum salam. It was very, very nice to be with you.
I love it. I love these demonstrations. I enjoy them. To me, I just get out the popcorn and let's enjoy.
I served as rabbi of Indonesia for 5 years. So many friends who are Muslims.
They keep screaming and crying, and their wails shouldn't stop. I'm such a joy. I can't wait for the next demonstration where they're crying and screaming. It's a picnic.
And I believe in...
He said it's a picnic.
Korra, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think I am, because I have a lot of Muslim friends who you actually would know.
So I let them scream, let them cry. That's why it doesn't bother me. That's why I'm so happy to see them screaming and crying.
Thank you for a breakdown.
God help us. God help us if they're laughing. If they're when they laughed in Gaza? When the last time they rejoiced? When 3,000 Americans were murdered on 9/11.
Bingo. You can anytime you want to join us, Korra. You're welcome. That was perfectly Jewish. Perfectly Jewish.
I mean, what do you exactly want? You want the pro-Hamas people? I'm using the word people very loosely here. Do you want these pro-Hamas, this Edom, to be rejoicing, to be smiling? No, I want them to be crying.
Just one more passage, and I'm sorry to keep you for so long.
Let them scream and cry. That means our children are alive.
Exactly, I see. All right, beautiful response.
If they're screaming and crying, good. Baruch Hashem, they should keep screaming and crying.
Absolutely, and that was a beautiful response.
It's a picnic.
That's a picnic.
It is. It means that we're alive.
The other guy's laughing. He's talking to guys who are laughing about him calling it a picnic.
It is.
Fair
It's
enough.
true. It's
No,
true.
It's good. No, I'm glad. I feel a lot better having talked to you about it. It's good.
Really.
Yeah.
But you made a great point of this in your debate, which I thought was brilliant.
I'm not upset. I'm happy. Thank God. That means that the enemy is going down,
I do have other questions, but I think I've kept you for long enough.
and they're crying and wailing because
Right.
the heroes are going up and being vaporized.
So thank you so much for the conversation. I very much appreciate it.
I'm feeling great. I'm feeling terrific.
It was very informative for me.
I said, thank God there's screaming and crying in the streets of London.
And I really do appreciate you coming on for this conversation.
Could you imagine if they were rejoicing? What would that mean? That would mean our soldiers are being murdered and slaughtered.
No, it's my pleasure, Korra. God bless you and continue on.
Well, that's the new alliance we've got there. The new alliance we've got, everyone. So let's now we're going to jump. Well, we're going to go ahead and jump into the debate. Let's take these first super chats, and then we'll jump into. No, not debate. It's an alliance.
It's a hug fest.
Yeah, it's a hug fest
alliance.
against the Trinity. Let's see. Survivor Series 2026. Tovia, Hijab, Sam, Duck Lips, Korra. Malik versus Anthony Rogers, D Wood, Apostate Prophet, God Logic, and Christina. Yeah, it'd be a good one. Yep, Tovia. Isn't that a weird alliance? Tovia, Muhammad Hijab, Sam, Duck Lips, Korra. You left out the Ortho Bros. You left out the Ortho Bros. Tovia, Muhammad Hijab, Sam Shamoon, Duck Lips, the Ortho Bros, and Korra under their manager Malik versus Anthony Rogers, D Wood, Apostate Prophet, God Logic, and Christina, managed by Thaddeus. That's a good lineup there. I bid D Wood looks pinker than ever. Ovary looks different. That's AP's new name. He went by Ovary because it was Avery and then Ivory for IP, and then he went by Ovary because he's weird. How's Apostate doing? Miss him and worry for him. Yeah, he was just over my house earlier. Has Tovia ever explained Zechariah 2:10? I've seen him point to Zechariah 12. Seen him point to Zechariah 12 in an interview. What are you saying, Anthony?
Oh, you said 12:10. I vaguely recall him responding to it. I'm certain somebody brought it up to him. His answer, though, was obviously very shallow because I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, let's see. Did you see that California gubernatorial candidate make the video saying all Zionists, even if they are from the USA, need to be deported? Can't say that about military-age males immigrating in, though. Yeah, that's true. Did Korra just take a Jew for an ally? Oh, yeah. Yeah, Surah 5, verse 51. Uh-oh. Don't take the Jews or the Christians as friends or allies. They are friends or allies of each other. Tovia Singer looks like an android named after a sewing machine. What's wrong with you guys? Come on. We got the thumbs up there. Then we got white beanie equals anti-Mahdi. Oh, yeah, black beanie is Mahdi. White beanie is the anti-Mahdi. Don't let stereotypes and mental shortcuts blind you to the truth of my ideas. Wait, Nordine? Would you make another account, Nordine? You need to think about them carefully and objectively. I assure you I do not. Today I saw a wanted poster. David Segara is wanted for months, but still he is live. Oh, wait, that's just Mike Winger. Oh, hi, Anthony and Issa. Yeah, I've seen the David Segara posters. I'd rather get repeated colonoscopies than listen to Tovia Singer speak about anything. Well, the Muslims love him. Issa Kabir is a menace. Deplatform this extremist. I know. It's pretty messed up. And then we have, come on, David, be reasonable. Singer's family probably planted garcid trees all around their home. Unfortunately, that only saves from one enemy. Yeah, that only works. That only works with one. Okay, perfect. Just kidding. God bless you, brothers in Christ. Thank you for exposing these false teachers. Then we have, my phone autocorrected Rabbi Tovia Singer to Rabid Takia Mike Winger. Oops. Then did Tovia set up his office in a half bathroom? Don't know. How dare you attack innocent rabbis without ash? Thanks, guys, for creating avalanches and tsunamis of apostasy. Grace Networks 1 and Ashko Canal brought Jay Smith to Germany. And YouTube, please help them reach more people. Great times for apologetics in Germany. Same book says he is the worst of all creation. Yeah, I put that on the screen. Sheikh Tovia is smart for a Muslim. He's smart for a Muslim. Gotta wonder what Tovia thinks his reward's going to be. Does he think God is going to say, heck yeah, Tovia, you lied and threw your heritage under the bus. So good, man. That is weird. 1 John 2:22, who is a liar but he that denieth that Jesus is the Christ, he is Antichrist. Yeah, next verse, really awesome too. Does Quran 5:44 confirm the rabbinic quotations of the Torah and affirm the Masoretic text? Can this version of the dilemma work better against Muslims who spread doubts over textual variants? Well, that's the issue. The Quran's just affirming the Torah. It says the Torah that they have, and it says the gospel, and it's the gospel that we have. So it doesn't look like it's confirming any particular textual tradition or something like that. It's just saying it affirms it. And the Quran doesn't seem to be aware that there would be things like textual variants and so on. I mentioned the next verse, 1 John 2:23, whoever denieth the Son, the same hath not the Father. That is true. Tovia Singer is the reason behind over 50% of Jewish stereotypes. He makes Jerry Seinfeld seem like a pleasant individual. Seinfeld does seem pleasant to me. You guys know something about Seinfeld? I don't. D. Wood excused for being late by showing the Korra video. And no wonder Tovia doesn't like Jesus. He doesn't want to love his enemies. And they want Christians to help them against Israel. They want Jews to help them against Trinity missionaries. They are delusional. Yeah, and again, they seem to understand, they seem to realize we can't do this by ourselves. I mean, they have almost a quarter of the world's population, and they're always like begging other groups to help them attack someone or to attack some position. It's kind of weird. It makes sense for some tiny little group that really needs help or needs some allies to do that, but you've got the second biggest group in the world, and you're constantly begging others for help. Pretty weird stuff. Hey, Anthony, what do you think about this, man? Unfortunately for Christians, Tovia's criticisms are unanswerable. His scholarship and logical analysis is so far above that of his critics. Anthony, do you agree or not?
Well, stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, we're about to check. Why are you talking before we've even gone through his stuff? What's your problem? And then, hey, Anthony. This guy is strong, but I haven't seen anyone worth a lick debate or challenge him. Anthony?
Any day of the week, Tovia.
Anthony.
We've had a standing challenge out there. I've got videos on my channel against Tovia. In fact, I'll draw people's attention to one of them now because I'm going to say something in a bit that kind of ramps this up. So I have a video in which I show that Tovia Singer's a polytheist because, among other things, he says that water is eternal, so it's a co-eternal reality with God, which last time I heard Tovia talking, he was calling something like that shirk. Remember, he was just quoted answering a question about whether Jews and Muslims can get along, and he mentioned all their grand agreements and so forth, and he said any kind of association of something with God, obviously in the sense of his divinity. It's not talking about, it being shirk to say that something exists and God exists, but saying something distinctive about some reality other than God that is uniquely true of God, according to the Torah, then that's shirk. Well, Tovia says water is eternal. But I'm going to show you today, Tovia takes it a step further. He's got another creator out there along with his deity. He and Korra, and she's going to be over there just lapping it up. So we got to ask what's going on with Korra's Tawhid as well. But
saying co-creator? They've got a co-creator?
Yeah, you're about to hear it.
Huh.
Tovia is going to wax eloquent, refuting that polytheistic misrepresentation of the Trinity. In the course of that, he's going to show us that he has another creator.
Hey, wait a minute. I haven't seen this, but I saw him in a different video. I don't know if this is you talking about Genesis 1:26 here? And his
He's going
interpretation?
to...
When he's saying God's talking to the angels about and then that we're
No,
he's
not he's going to go a different route. He's going to go a different route, but it's that verse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I saw him in a different one. He's saying God's talking to the angels here. It's like, wait, let us make man in our image. So it's God's talking to the angels about creating man, and they're all working together, creating man in the image of God/angels. That's interesting stuff.
He's probably said that elsewhere because it's
I did. I saw
common.
that. I saw him say that. Yeah. In a different video.
It's very common for people to have a whole bunch of different mutually exclusive or contradictory answers, but pull whichever one out of the bag that they think is useful for the occasion. Mm-hmm. So that's not the answer he gives to Korra this time. So
all right. Now, Anthony, just to be clear, do you agree to debate Rabbi Tovia Singer on, let's say, something that he should regard as really, really easy and simple? He just has to show you what the passages actually say. Would you agree to debate him on whether God is, let's say, multi-personal in the Old Testament?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's where I was going with. So I have these videos. I've responded to Tovia for years. Sometimes they're short videos. Sometimes they're several hours long. Not long ago, Ash tagged Tovia in, I forget exactly how it was worded and so forth, but he's basically challenging Tovia to debate, and he's got a list of people there. My name's on it. He asked me first. I'm assuming he asked others first before using their names as well. So several people are on a list saying they'll happily debate Tovia. That's been quite a while now since that went out. No response from Tovia.
Yeah, I have to say that's why this is kind of weird. This guy's strong, but I haven't seen anyone worth a lick debate or challenge him. That reminds me of what Muslims thought years ago about like Zakir Naik. I mean, I guess some of them still think like that. Why isn't anyone challenging Zakir Naik when literally everyone challenged him and he backed down from every single challenge? And then they think, oh, he's not debating all these guys, therefore no one's challenging him, and not, oh, he's just been backing down from everybody. So. Yeah, weird stuff going on here. I consider myself a Jewish believer in Jesus. I've known rabbis like Singer. They aren't believers in God. They just hate Christians. I think that's definitely true of him, and I don't even know if it's necessarily against Christians, but definitely hates Christianity. Rabbi Tovia should help Muslims find the wall of Dul Qarnayn and also trace the path Abraham took to go and build the Kaaba. Yeah, that would be helpful. Then he'd really be their hero. Muslims are so strong they had to invent a phobia. That's pretty powerful. Seinfeld dated a 17-year-old as a 38-year-old and bad stand-up. Oh, but I thought you were talking about him being mean. You were talking about him coming across as mean. Oh yeah, if he did dirtbag stuff, that wouldn't surprise me. I mean, that'd be kind of minor compared to some of the stuff that came out like the Diddy stuff. But would Tovia spit on Christians? I don't know where he stands on that. And I am a Muslim. Lol. Oh, I didn't say that. Yeah, you better not. We don't tolerate that around here. All right, Anthony, you ready to jump into this?
Let's do it.
All right, Anthony. Now you are one of the premier Christian apologists showing that the God of the Old Testament is triune, but you never encountered Rabbi Tovia Singer being interviewed by Korra. So now you're going to have to face reality. Here we have
the dream team.
The dream team. Korra and Rabbi Tovia Singer.
Hello.
What's that?
This is Korra's Rebellion, and Tovia has joined it.
It is funny their name's Korra, and then Tovia has joined Korra's Rebellion. That is funny. All right, so here we go. We got the hello. I only saw the first couple seconds, but it is funny. She says, Assalamu alaikum to all the Muslims, and then he jumps in there with, alaikum assalam, like she was talking to him.
Me too.
And so he includes himself among the Muslims, apparently. Oh boy, let's see.
Hello. Assalamu alaikum to all the Muslims that are going to be watching, and I hope everybody else that is watching is having a good day. And today we are going to be having an interview with Rabbi Tovia Singer. How are you doing today?
Walaikum salam. It was very, very nice to be with you. Thank you.
Of course. All right. So, first off, I wanted to preface by saying I really do believe that you have a lot of knowledge with regards to the Hebrew Bible. So I did want to have some, questions about specific interpretations of verses that a lot of Christians use, or a lot of Muslims, or whatever it may be. And I want to go ahead and get your perspective on those things.
Sure.
So
it is pretty. That is funny, right? She says, "Assalamu alaikum" to all the Muslims, and he says, "Well, walaikum assalam," like he's one of the Muslims. It's pretty wild.
The first verse that I wanted to ask you about was it's in Genesis 1.
Oh,
right?
Hey, that's good. I assumed she was just going to go from that, since that's what he made his video about. But yep, Genesis 1. So hey, are they actually? If she's starting in Genesis 1, is she going to go through them in order?
Well, I don't know how far this goes. I only listened to 20 minutes, but they go from Genesis 1:26 to Genesis 19:24 to the angel of the Lord, and that's kind of where I stopped listening.
Oh, okay. Well, it seems like a good progression then. Seems like they're starting at the beginning and working their way through. All right, and
there's something else here, though. Notice what Korra's asking him. She's seeking insight from Tovia, which means that this is possibly Korra letting her slip show. Right? These are the texts that Christians bring up that she wants to be better armed on. In other words, she doesn't at this point feel adequate to the challenges that have been put to her. Maybe that's reading a little bit too much in it, but it says something, doesn't it? That she's over here. What do you say about this?
Begging a rabbi for help. Yeah.
Yeah,
and that way she can take the clips, and when a Christian points this out, she can go, "No, this Jewish rabbi says that's not what it means."
Right.
It is weird how they view, and I'm saying this because this goes back to Muhammad. For Muhammad's told in Surah 10, verse 94, "Muhammad, if you are in doubt as to what we have revealed to you, ask those who are reading the book before you." That's Jews and Christians. And when he gets to Medina, it's like the Jews are the authorities on these matters, and when they reject him as a prophet, then suddenly they're not, and he concludes that they're liars. I don't know why that would change with modern Jews who reject Muhammad. According to Islam, there are perfectly clear prophecies in the Torah about Muhammad and about the true religion Islam. Jews know about them, but they cover it up, and that's why they eventually have to be completely wiped out according to Islam. But in the meantime, the people who are covering up the truth and trying to cover up Muhammad in the Torah and so on, these are the guys to go to learn about the Torah, according to Muslims. These are good times, man.
In Genesis 1, it's verses 26 through 27. God is speaking, and he says, "Let us create man in our image." How would you respond to somebody who says that this is evidence of a multi-personal or triune God?
Wait, you got to stop here. So here's something everybody should have in their thoughts right now. Ask yourself right now if you can think of different interpretations of this, right? Now this question really is for those that haven't heard the different things that people have said in order to try and deal with this. Just those that have read the text maybe several times through. Ask yourself, when you hear Tovia say this, has this interpretation ever occurred to you? Or does this sound to you like desperation to deal with the text? Now, I'm not saying this is unattested, but it's not attested to the extent that Tovia needs, and it certainly doesn't work with the text. But anyways, listen to Tovia.
Okay, so guys, again, the Korra brings up Genesis 1. In the opening chapter of Genesis, God says, "Let us create man in our image." And who's us and who's our here? Well, Christians point to this verse and Rabbi Tovia is going to respond. Let's hear what he's got to say.
What a tragedy that is. What a tragedy. That people should hold such a holy book and worship idolatry when doing that. So, as it turns out, man is created in a unique way. We know that in the book of Genesis, it's also in the Quran. In that, man is binary, which means God collected the clay of the earth and blew into it his spirit. In Arabic, it's kind of like a word like nephesh in Hebrew. So therefore, man is made of two things. Unlike frogs and chickens, and I know you, the viewers, love your dogs. Your dog is not created. We'll just use the term.
What the heck did he just say to Muslims? You love your dogs? He just said to Muslims, you love your dogs? I'm guessing he doesn't know, because otherwise that would be something you're trying to throw in there if you're trying to tick people off, and he's obviously not trying to tick people off. He doesn't know. He doesn't know. Now, guys, you do have Muslims who don't take the passage, who don't believe in the hadiths. That talk about, killing dogs and stuff like that. But Korra, she's in the camp that would take those hadiths very seriously. And he just said, hey, and I know you guys love your dogs. Oh, boy. All right, let me back that up.
It's kind of like a word like nephesh in Hebrew. So therefore, man is made of two things. Unlike frogs and chickens, and I know you, the viewers, love your dogs. Your dog is not created. We'll just use the term in the image of God, and I don't know what that means, but that means a dog or a gorilla does not have a divine soul in it. When God came to creating man, he took the clay of the earth. And what's striking is that we now know that we're actually made of stardust, which is very, very striking. He shaped it into the form of a man and then blew into it his spirit. So if in some way the creation of man was conveying, as Christians argue, the doctrine of the Trinity, then why isn't Jesus also creating light? Or why isn't he creating the animals and the fish? Why doesn't he say, let us make fish?
Wait, what? Did he say, why doesn't Jesus create?
So here's what he's doing.
Hang on. Did he just? Is that what he just said? I want to back it up. Did he just say, "Why isn't Jesus creating"? Did he say that?
So yeah, but he's saying the us doesn't appear until verse 26.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people maybe miss what he's saying. The us refers to when God says, "Let us." The others that he's referring to are the earth and the breath. So God, together with Mother Earth and this stuff called soul, is creating. They are coming together and creating man. Okay,
so this is God. So this is God talking to these other things and saying, "Let us create."
Yeah, the earth and nephesh. That's why he's saying, man's a binary. Man is a combination of earth and. Now this idea can be found in people like Maimonides. It's not an ancient Jewish idea so much as what I'll show you in a moment, but this is the sort of thing that you have to do and you're inclined to do if you don't want the Christian option and you realize the inadequacy of the other answers that have been given in history. So basically, though, he's saying that God, together with the earth and nephesh, soul, created man. So that's the us in the hour. And then he's saying from that, if this is supposedly Jesus, then why doesn't it say us earlier in Genesis? Right? It would be Jesus all the way through.
I was thinking more along the lines, because it sounded like he said, why isn't Jesus create like this? But I'm saying he's talking to Muslims right now, and in the Quran, Jesus fashions clay birds and breathes the spirit into them and gives life to clay birds. That's why I was just wondering about this. Let me just back it up, see what he said.
Things. Unlike frogs and chickens, and I know you, the viewers, love your dogs. Your dog is not created. We'll just use the term in the image of God, and I don't know what that means, but that means a dog or a gorilla does not have a divine soul in it. When God came to creating man, he took the clay of the earth. And what's striking is that we now know that we're actually made of stardust, which is very, very
So he's talking to the stardust, apparently.
striking. He shaped it into the form
Hey, stardust, let us create man in our image.
of a man and then blew into it his spirit. So if in some way the creation of man was conveying, as Christians argue, the doctrine of the Trinity, then why isn't Jesus also creating light? Or why isn't he creating the animals or the fish? Why doesn't it say, let us make fish? See, if Jesus is a part of the creator, as actually stated in the prologue of John, why doesn't it say anywhere else? What's unique for man is that man literally is summoning two things. Number one, the physical material of the world.
This is just stupid.
Yeah, it's colossally stupid, but think about this. So, and it's just stupid on so many levels. But let me just throw this in here real quick. He thinks he's doing a bang-up job. He's saying, when it comes to the creation of man, we've got something unique here, right? Unlike these other things, they're not made up of. And so he does this little diversion thing about man being made up of stardust and so forth. Well, okay, you can pick up stuff that's talking about the chemical makeup of man and that sort of thing, and it will talk about stardust. But wait a minute, isn't it equally true that everything else, right? Fish are made up of stardust, right? Tovia is trying to justify the us and our language on the grounds that what man is made up of is this other stuff, the ground and the breath. And supposedly this isn't true in the case of other things, but it is true in the case of stardust. Other things are made up. Now, by the way, he's also equivocating here. The idea that something is made up of something is not the same thing as being made by something, right? If I make a statue out of marble, it's made up of marble. It's not made by marble. The marble didn't do anything. The marble's passive. This is why I say that Tovia, who's trying to plug his other deities in here to the us and our, ends up becoming a associator, right? Somebody who associates partners with God, because he's trying to say that the us and our, the word in Genesis, or the language there, it's a cohortative in Hebrew, which is like a exhortation. It'd be like David said to me, hey, let's respond to this video. Let us respond to this video. It's a cohortative. He's exhorting me or saying, let's do this. That's what's happening in Genesis 1:26. God is addressing someone, saying, let us do this. And Tovia says that's the earth, and that's the breath. So they have to be actively involved in this work. So that's a huge problem for Tovia, unless, of course, he just consistently suppresses the implications of what he's saying. But if he's consistent, then he is, in fact, by saying that God is addressing stardust or clay or whatever, he is making them co-creators with God.
Yeah, and I guess that so that he just completely fails there. It gets really weird when he says, why doesn't Jesus, if Jesus starts creating there and they're saying that's about Jesus, then why isn't he creating other things? When, again, John 1, as he points out, there you do have all things being created by Jesus. But then, in addition, like he's talking to Muslims, and Muslims in the Quran, Jesus does create birds, but it's just silly that you have right here, let us create man in our image. And he says, well, why isn't it us in the verse? Well, it doesn't say. It just says God's creating, God's creating, God's creating, God's creating, God's creating. And then when man is special, it's let us create man. Who's the us here? I've seen him elsewhere say it's God talking to angels. So angels would be co-creators. But here he's talking to stardust, apparently.
Yeah, again, I think what he thinks he's demonstrating is that it has to be the case that God is addressing creation, earth and soul, because those are the constituent elements of man. And that's because when you look before the verse, where you don't have things being made up of these constituent elements, God doesn't employ these plural terms. So he thinks that this proves it can't be Jesus or the Spirit involved with God from point one. But this brings up another issue that Tovia hasn't even for a second thought about, but ancient Jews did. So Tovia thinks the first initial signs of personal plurality are in verse 26, right? That's the whole point when he says, why only here and not before that? But as I've pointed out before, God is already speaking. Speaking is an inescapably social phenomena. It doesn't take place between non-persons or even a solitary person unless that person has had social contact, right? Unless they're a social being. So for example, we've mentioned, like, if you have a kid that grows up on a deserted island with no other human beings, it's not going to develop a language. It's not going to have developed speech. This is something that's used to communicate. It takes place between persons. So the immediate problem that Tovia has to deal with long before he gets to verse 26 is why God is portrayed as a personal being doing the sort of thing that happens between persons, not just one person, but between multiple persons. And I said, this is the sort of thing, lost Ash, but this is the sort of thing that ancient rabbis actually wrestled with. I can't remember the rabbi's name. I could probably pull it up while we're looking at more video of Tovia, but there was a particular rabbi that the sages said shook the world with his interpretations, because he would engage in deep contemplation over every word of the Torah, and in this case, Genesis 1, whereas we're used to just sort of gliding over things very casually, right? God spoke, things happened, great. This shows God made things by his power, and that's kind of the point. But rabbis often wanted to turn over every rock, and this rabbi was in particular invested in this. And one of the things that he observed is, on the one hand, you have God speaking, which is already curious. Why is God speaking? Secondly, why does this way of speaking that seems to indicate the transcendent greatness and power of God, he just speaks and it is, why does it then turn around and say things like, and it was done, or God saw, and then God blessed? It's almost like you've got this action and reaction or interaction taking place. And it seems to play on more than one level, where you don't just have this transcendent kind of idea being communicated, but also a very immanent notion, something that suggests an interplay or other persons. And I'll have more to say about this in a moment, but we'll let Tovia talk a little more. But I just want to sort of bring up for people this idea that even before Genesis 1:26, we already have something to think about. And when you look at verses 1 through 3, it's especially problematic, because in verse 2, it explicitly mentions the Spirit of God. If God is speaking to someone, well, don't you think one of the most obvious candidates for who he might be speaking to is somebody already mentioned in the context? Right? The Spirit of God is mentioned in the context, brooding over the creation. That word is only used one other time in the Torah, at the very end, or near the very end, in Deuteronomy 32, where it speaks of God brooding over the people of Israel. Now, the contexts here are very similar. In Genesis 1, it says the earth was without form and void. When you look at Deuteronomy 32, it's talking about God rescuing the Israelites and brooding over them in the formless wilderness. It uses the same language found in Genesis 1. It's also the case that God in Deuteronomy 32 is referring back to the Exodus, where he parted the waters and caused Israel to come through on dry ground. Well, when you look at Genesis 1, remember the earth is submerged in water, and God, through a series of successive fiats, causes the waters to part and the dry land to emerge. It's the same kind of scenario. Israel's being portrayed as a new creation. So what's the upshot of this? The upshot of this is what it says about the Spirit in Genesis 1:2 is exactly what it says about God in Deuteronomy 32. It's telling you the same God who is with Israel, saved Israel, brooded over Israel, is the God who was there brooding over the creation at the beginning, but who is there called the Spirit of God. So already in Genesis, you've got mention of God's Spirit, you've got God speaking, you've got action and reaction, and you've got all this before you get to Genesis 1:26. And I'm only scratching the surface, but this is part of why I said earlier, Korra is an easy sell. She doesn't have anything to push back with. Tovia can say whatever he wants, and Korra's like a sitting duck, right? She doesn't have anything to fight him off with. The Muslims should be upset that this rabbi is taking advantage of a Muslima.
Oh yeah. Hey Ash, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, so something to note here about the thing in Genesis, let us make man in our image. So there's three major opinions in mainstream Jewish commentary about this, right? So Rashi talks about the Council of Angels, shows God's humility to consult with his servants before doing something, and so on, which is kind of wacky to begin with. Ramban, so Nachmanides, talks about the earth being the second subject, right? God and the earth making man, which would obviously, as Anthony pointed out, would be incredibly problematic. But what's funny is, Tovia, I would assume, I don't know why he doesn't go to the most easy to verify for himself source on a lot of things. So the other major opinion is Ibn Ezra, who just says, in this context of God's relationship with mankind, God is speaking in a form of majesty to show his greatness, which you could just say that works better than the other two, right?
Yeah. I don't think it doesn't work, but I'd say that's much simpler. Come on, Muslims would have agreed with him in a heartbeat if he just said, yeah, that's the plural of majesty right there, and they'd all gone, oh, right. yeah, we know about the plural of majesty.
Yeah. Now notice,
what's really funny about this, yeah.
Well, I was going to say the rabbis you mentioned, they're all medieval rabbis, right? He mentioned Maimonides, right. Nachmanides, and Ibn Ezra. Now, that isn't to say there isn't any prior reference to certain notions along these lines.
Oh, there is.
But if you're looking for, one of the problems, just to mention on the plural of majesty one, you don't find that in ancient Jewish sources. You don't find it in the Talmud. You don't find it in the Midrash. You don't find it anywhere in the ancient sources. It's a later attempt to deal with this, which reflects an influence from later conventions. Right. This is even true in the case of the Quran, as I pointed out. My go-to example of this is, the person I'm thinking of, David, the Muslim scholar M.A.S. Abdel Halim. Mm-hmm. Right. He wrote an article called Iltifat, and then it's got some long subtitle, where he's trying to explain the curious feature of the Quran where it banters back and forth between singulars and plurals, speaks in the first person or the second person with no rhyme or reason. Like you're dizzy by the Quran because you can't tell if Allah's still speaking or not, if he's talking about himself or not. It gets very confusing. Well, he's trying to deal with this, and he points out that when it comes to the plurals, there was no such thing as a plural of majesty at the time the Quran was written. So this isn't something that would have been naturally available to the Muslims who knew Arabic, which is why when the Christians of Najran went up to Muhammad and debated with him, when you look at the Surah of Ibn Yitzhak, he mentions that one of the things they asked him about is, why does Allah speak in the plural if he's only one? Notice these are Christians, but they're Arab Christians. They know Arabic. They don't think, oh, obviously this is the plural of majesty. Nor does Muhammad respond to them by saying it's the plural of majesty. Instead, Muhammad comes back the next day alleging a revelation and says, well, there's some things in Allah's book that are clear, and there are some things that aren't clear, and only Allah understands their meaning. Surah 3:7. So no such thing at the time of Muhammad as a plural of majesty in Arabic. 2, this wasn't what Muhammad was introducing in the Quran either, because when he was challenged on it, he didn't give this answer. But what I wanted to point out, though, is so here you have these three medieval rabbis giving these interpretations. Well, how about this one that Tovia didn't give? This is from Targum Neophiti. And, I mean, this ought to blow the mind of any Christian who hasn't heard these things before, but this is how this section of Genesis is rendered. So this is not a Christian source. It's a Jewish Targum. It's a rendering of the Hebrew text into Aramaic. It says, "And the Lord said, let us create man in our likeness, similar to ourselves, and let them rule over the fishes of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. And the memra of the Lord," which is Aramaic for logos, or logos, the word, "and the word of the Lord created the man in his own likeness. In a likeness from before the Lord he created him, male and his partner he created them. And the glory of the Lord blessed them, and the memra of the Lord said to them, be strong and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it." So notice, according to the Targum, it uses three terms here to speak of who the us and our are. It's not the earth, it's not nephesh or anything else. It's the Lord, his logos, and his glory. The glory is also speaking here. The glory blessed them. The glory is the one who endows them with a blessing. And what's further interesting in the Targum is, and Ash can, I don't know if you've ever looked at this, but you can look at it and confirm this, but if you look at the very first verse of Genesis 2, the very first verse where it says, "And thus were completed the heavens and the earth," in the Masoretic text, which is post-Christian, and so reflects the later vowel pointings of the Masoretes, so they're giving their interpretation of the consonantal text, it renders it as a passive, "Thus were completed the heavens and the earth." But if you just read the consonantal text, there's another possibility. And that other possibility is how it was taken by the Targums, or in this Targum. It says, "And thus they completed the heavens and the earth." And the "they" refers back to the us and the our of Genesis. So wait a minute, Tovia. Remember Tovia said, why isn't it the case that the us and the our were involved prior to Genesis 1:26? Well, according to the Targum, it was the us and the our of verse 26 that were responsible for creating and finishing the heavens and the earth, the whole kit and caboodle. So
doesn't Job also say that the spirit that's referenced in Genesis 1 is actually the one that created man?
Yeah, in Job 34, he says, "The Spirit of God has made me." The Spirit of God made me.
All right. We ready for more Tovia here? Let's see.
I was going to add
the Christians
one there.
Good.
So something really interesting about Tovia discussing this verse at all is that Tovia makes the claim that the Septuagint, which is heavily used in Christianity, that it's a made-up Greek translation of the church, right? What's interesting, though, is that he claims that the original Septuagint, which was just the 5 books, that's the real Septuagint, right? And it only is the 5 books. Now, we know that's not true because we have manuscript evidence to show that there were translations of the writings and prophets as well. What's interesting, though, is that the Talmud itself actually says that the rabbis who originally translated the Septuagint intentionally put in errors so that it would be clear that it's different, right? And not to confuse the Gentiles that there might accidentally be polytheism. So the Talmud says that the rabbis who translated the Septuagint rendered, "Let us make man in our image," as I will make man in my image, so that the pagans wouldn't be confused and think the Jews are polytheists. Well, two things there. Number one, that shows that this is an incredibly problematic verse for Judaism. But number two, that would mean that the Septuagint that we have as Christians is an authentic Jewish translation, because it doesn't render it that way.
But
it renders it as plural.
Yeah. Sorry, there's a little lag on your end, so if I sound like I'm cutting you off, that's why.
No worries.
Number one, it is true in terms of the original legend that's told from the letter of Aristeas and so forth. The original translation that was made was of the first 5 books, but it's also true that the other books were, over the course of the pre-Christian centuries, also translated. But you can tell differences in translation style and that sort of thing between the different books. But what's interesting, you might be interested in this. There's a Jewish Christian guy named Brian Crawford. I can find it if you don't find it in a search. But Brian Crawford actually wrote a response to Tovia, and it's pretty devastating when it comes to the Septuagint. Not only does it, he's actually directly responding to Tovia, but it also shows problems with the Talmudic discussion as well. But yeah, good point on the plural there. I mean, there's no Septuagint manuscript that has it in the singular, so that's just, there's no evidence to justify that.
Right. It's a double whammy kind of, because it shows that it's a problematic verse, and it corroborates that our Septuagint is an authentic Jewish translation.
All right, let's check out some more of this here.
Stated in the prologue of John, why doesn't it say anywhere else? What's unique for man is that man literally is summoning 2 things. Number one, the physical material of the world that he had already created. Everything else that God created was created ex nihilo, which means from absolutely nothing.
See, he's playing a game again. Like he's and Korra, again, she's just over there defenseless, poor thing. The salvation of Dawa, going to the rabbi to help her do what all the Dawagandis haven't been able to do without her. She's helpless. So he says the justification for saying it's us, and us means earth and so forth, is because everything else was created ex nihilo. He's playing a game with her. Everything was created ex nihilo in the beginning, but subsequent to that, it speaks of God forming and making things from that which he made. But the animals are made from the ground too, right? Like, where does he get, the trees and everything else are coming up out of the ground. He even says, let them produce, right? Let the earth produce vegetation and so forth. So he wants to pretend that there's something that necessitates saying us here because he's talking to the earth, because it's not true in the case of other things. But it is true in the case of other things. Tobia's whole theory doesn't hold together here.
Yeah.
That's what unique is about God. But when it came to man, he took something that already existed, the clay of the earth, and then something else. And that is that metaphysical soul, that spirit, whatever that is in us. And that's why it's let us. Those 2 things combined together. And pow, we have man. And again, that's why God doesn't say, let us make light. Doesn't say, listen, it's only man that's binary. It's completely unique.
I see.
Ash, is it the case that the Hebrew doesn't speak of animals having a soul? Now, obviously, we would say there's something different between man and the animals. We are the image of God. But Tobia's pretending that, again, this language is
Judaism
different
doesn't
here.
teach a metaphysical soul for inanimate things as well.
Yeah, but I mean, it uses the term soul for animals all over the place.
Right. I mean, in Jewish tradition, you see all over, even in prayers, like the soul of every living thing. So animals would be included in that. You even have inanimate objects having a sort of a soul-like thing, sparks of the divine, and so on in Kabbalistic terminology. He's not. Here's the thing. This is why I feel bad for her. Okay. He very clearly, in his interactions, he will speak at the level that he thinks he can manipulate, right? So when he didn't know that I have a lot of friends that had converted to Christianity, he's telling me all these tales about how Christians only convert for blah, 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 which is not true. So he didn't realize in that case. But he's basically assessing how dumb he thinks somebody is, and then going to the tier of argument that he thinks he can get away with that person. So he doesn't respect her at all, even as far as her intelligence and her basic comprehension of these things goes, right? Which I don't know if she is or isn't. he obviously thinks she is not very intelligent, because that's the level of argument he's using with her. That's an indicator of how he feels about her.
This reminds me. This reminds me of the Dawa bros. Like the Dawa guys, they won't use certain arguments. We say if people know the Dawa script, they won't use that argument against someone who knows the Dawa script. But then if they're talking to someone who has absolutely no clue what they're talking about, then they'll start using that argument that they know wouldn't work against someone who's familiar with the argument. They know it won't work against them, but I'm talking to an ignorant person, and now I can use my argument from the perfect preservation of the Quran, or my argument from scientific miracles. I know this wouldn't work against any, actual like Christian apologists or polemicists or something like that. But now I'm talking to a person who doesn't know anything about Islam, and now I can run this argument. That's kind of what this is reminding me of. Like, he knows this argument wouldn't work against someone who kind of knows the issue, but he's using it on Korra, which means he just, hey, here's a completely ignorant person, and I can run this argument, and she's just gonna lap it all up. She's gonna lap it up, and I'm gonna say, yep, it's God talking to the dust and dirt and everything else, and they're all gathering together, man, all as co-creators. Good to know. Good to know.
So in that portion of the passage, the way that I usually interpret it is, so in Genesis 1, verse 26, it says, let us make man in our image. The verse following right after that, I believe it's verse 27, it then repeats. And
yes, the verse after verse 26 would be verse 27. Anyway.
Says, so God made man in his image. Would you say that is an evidence that it's not a
that should be the name for Tovia's God, Shirk Dirt.
Shirk Dirt. Shirk Dirt.
Or try.
You probably can't tell at this point. It'll become more apparent in a moment, but she didn't even get what Tovia said.
No.
Tovia's rambling was already incoherent for her, and so what she's saying, how about this? And that's not Tobia's answer, and Tobia's actually going to disagree with this. But the funny thing is, the answer that she's giving actually has, it seems to me, earlier pedigree than the answer he gave. So she at least has that going for her, that there were people before the ones that Tovia is relying on for his explanation that said this.
Let's see, because this sounds like the same thing she said in her debate. But let's just go to the next verse. Let's see.
God made man in his image. Would you say that is an evidence that it's not a multi-personal God or a triune God?
Not when speaking to a Christian. It means if you as a Muslim and I as a Jew were having a conversation, because we worship one true God, the only true God, one
Allah
being, one person, alone. So we can have that conversation, you and I, and we would agree on that. That's correct. Let us, and then it goes to the singular. But the problem is when engaging a Christian, and both you and I do that, we don't want to fight. We want them to repent of idolatry. That's our goal, or else what are we doing here? So the Christian would then go, aha, that's the nature of Jesus. There is a triune nature, a three persons, and a hypostatic union, all grotesque Greek philosophical ideas that the church still to this day doesn't agree on. But whatever that means, they'd say, aha. So there you have the plurality of the multi-persons, and then you have the oneness in verse 27. And that's why, as an apologist, you're a person who engages in apologetics, you're opening the door for Christians to go, yeah, there's the three and one, three and then one. And in fact, I would just say, and I think you would agree with me, it doesn't really answer the question. We really want to know, why is man created of multiple things? Now we know we are actually, in some way, we have an immortal soul, and neither of us are going to pretend to know exactly what that means, but we're created in God's image in some metaphysical but grand plan. The whole world is created for us. So I believe that you always want to give the clear, direct answer, and this, of course,
when he says us, the world is created for us. What he's leaving out for her is that the us, in the metaphysical context of what he's referring to in the soul, from his worldview, would be specifically the Jewish people, not Gentiles. You don't possess the same soul that he's talking about, as far as he's concerned.
Yeah.
I'm just shocked that he's going, and no, don't go with that. go with this clear answer that I gave about the stardust. And it's like, wait, what?
So what's interesting here, so I said that the answer that she's giving is one that has some precedent in earlier Jewish sources. So in Genesis Rabbah, you actually have a number of different explanations given. But in one place in Genesis Rabbah, it mentions a particular rabbi, Rabbi Simlai. It says, Rabbi Simlai said, wherever you find a point supporting the Manim, and as an aside here, Manim, in some people's opinion, means Gentiles, perhaps Christians, but more cogent research has demonstrated it sometimes means aberrant Jews, at least aberrant from the perspective of the sages that are codifying.
Yeah, mainstream in Jewish Orthodoxy, that would refer to any kind of heretical Jew specifically. Very often in the Talmud and other Midrashic sources, it means Jews who have apostatized and turned to Christianity. But generally it can mean heretics. It's less used for Gentiles. It's more used for Jews who have gone astray. But it can mean Gentiles with heretical views.
When you think about it, it has to be Jews of some sort, because the objections that are being raised on the basis of the Hebrew text. A number of these things aren't going to be noticed in translation. So in this particular case, it says, this particular rabbi, Rabbi Simlai, said, whenever you find a point supporting the Manim, notice he says supporting them, you find the refutation at its side. They asked him again, what is meant by, and God said, let us make man? And then the rabbi says, read what follows. It doesn't say God's created man, but God created. So what this rabbi is doing is he's saying, look, the next verse uses the singular, not the plural. But then here's how this ends. When the Manim went out, that is, having been answered by Rabbi Simlai, when the Manim went out, his disciples, the rabbi's disciples, said to him, them you have dismissed with a mere makeshift, but how will you answer us? I love that last line. What they're saying is, oh, they fell for it. You said something that it's like Tovia, right? If you're talking to Christians, you say this, because that'll work with them. So this rabbi is basically coming up with a answer that will dupe this party, and but then his disciples say, what are you going to tell us? Because what they're reflecting is the idea that what you have done by your explanation is you've negated one text by affirming the other, but we affirm the whole text, right? We don't say that one portion is true at the expense of another. You have to interpret all of it in a harmonious way. And so you can't just dismiss the plurals on the basis of the singular. And Tovia basically said this, didn't he? Tovia said, what the Christian's going to do is say, you've just fallen into our hands.
He said that won't work. That won't work against Christian.
Yeah, because the Christian's going to say, yeah, unity and plurality. There you have it.
Hey, that'd be a funny little video. Rabbi Tovia Singer destroys Korra's lie about Genesis 1:26 and 27. That's funny. And then have him in the thumbnail scolding her. That won't work, dummy. Anyway. Good to know.
Poor Korra.
Genesis chapter 2, verse 7.
I was just going to tell Ash, we've called this Korra's Rebellion, and Tovia has joined it.
I don't know if you saw in the chat, I responded. So Tovia always talks about how he's a Kohen, a priest from the line of Aaron. So it makes it doubly funny.
Oh, that is extra funny. That is cool.
7, which we find in the next chapter, where God collects the clay of the earth and breathes in the spirit of life, which is found in the Torah. Of course, it's in the Quran.
Yes.
It's so strange how she, like, if she's talking to Christians, she's like real snappy back and stuff like this. When she's in the presence of a rabbi, she's just, I mean, he just said, you're wrong. Don't try that. It won't work. And you need to use my explanation, which you won't, because you obviously didn't even understand a word of it and probably weren't even listening. And she's just going,
yes, Rabbi.
Yes, Rabbi. Whatever you say, Rabbi.
I don't think I don't think it's deference and respect. It's more the fact that she's read his comment section where all kinds of Christians become Muslims after watching his videos. So.
Powerful. Gotta love it.
So in terms of the language that's used in Genesis 1:26, if a Christian were to come to you and ask, what is the reason for this plurality in the passage when it says, let us make man in our image? What
Notice,
is the significance?
He already answered that.
Yeah, she wasn't paying attention.
She doesn't get it at all.
Yeah, it seems like she just had questions lined up and she's just reading them, even though, yeah, okay, let's see. I wonder if he's going to say, I already talked about that. It's stardust, lady, stardust.
This plurality, if not a multi-personal God.
Oh, so we answer very simply, and that is God is summoning both the physical and the spiritual and saying, let us make man in our image. When God created animals earlier, or fish the day before, the stars and the moon on day 4, did God summon the nefesh, the soul? The answer is no. And that's why there's no us. It's so
but they're made of stardust.
That when man is being created, God is actually using something else besides him, meaning something that has already been created, namely the clay of the earth. So saying us, he's never done this before, and that's why you'll never find us prior to it. The Christians are going to be in a terrible predicament here. Now, we don't want them to be in a terrible predicament. Korra and I just want Christians to repent of the doctrine of the Trinity.
Listen to him. He keeps saying, the reason for the us is because now God is using the earth, which he created. Everything else was ex nihilo. What does it say immediately before this in Genesis 1? It says in verse 24, God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures. So what do you mean, Tovia? His whole argumentation doesn't even match the text. I mean, I'm just saying, apart from like the made up idea that it's earth and all, I mean, if you come up with a theory and you can make it like dance with other things, at least you can not look like a complete dolt. But Tovia here can't even, did he read the text before answering this?
That's what I'm saying. It's like, I mean, the entire thing sounds stupid. He's saying, and Christians are going to have a real trouble with this once they realize that it's God talking to the dirt and the stardust and saying, hey, let's all work together here in creating, let us make man in our image. And then the entire basis for even claiming that, which Tovia, just so you know, would sound insane to a Christian, that God's talking to the dirt. Hey, dirt. Hey, let us, you and me, work together, and we'll go ahead and create something special that we've never created from the dirt, from the earth. We've never done this before. And then Anthony's pointing out just a couple verses earlier, and the earth brought forth. What is this, man? This is bad.
Yeah. Now, two other things I'll just say quickly. Like I said, there's like 20 things that can be said to this, but I'll just throw these out there. Because you quoted the verse, it reminded me, it's not just the let us make, which, by the way, every single other time this occurs, it's one person speaking to others or on behalf of others. So, for example, the nation of Israel says, all that the Lord has commanded, we will do. In Hebrew, it's the exact same phrase, we will make or do. And that's used scores of times, always persons. It's never impersonal things. But secondly, notice that what Tovia's interpretation entails is not only that the earth is somehow co-active with God, creating man, and so is one of Tovia's deities, but the statement is, let us make man in our image. The image is singular. The image is common to the us and the our. So whoever us and our are, they have a common image in which man is being made. So does God share the same image as the earth? Is the earth God's image now? Because he's saying, let us make man in our image, our common image. Tobia's paganism is off the rails here.
It is pretty darn pagan right here. This sounds like some pagan nonsense. Let's see.
This is not a game at all. We don't want to hurt Christians. We want Christians just to worship the one true God. But yeah, you only
Mother
have
Earth.
a very short time. You got to tell them what is really happening here on the atomical level. On the atomical level, what God is saying is, He's saying it to the world, the earth that's already been created. Let us make man in our image.
You guys getting this? So
All it
again, I
takes is a
watched
little bit of
another.
faith.
I watched another video by him, and he's saying this is God talking to the angels. Here, it's God talking to, as Ash calls it, shirk dirt, because now he's associating dirt as his partner in creation. And keep in mind, that's not. You wouldn't say if God creates something out of dirt, that's shirk. But I mean, he's calling on this as his co-creator and speaking to it. What the heck?
Oops, sorry. There's a person in the chat who's over here trying to correct my point about the word image.
Who is it?
Singular.
Who is it? You want me to crush this person?
Well, but okay, I see this all the time.
Who is it?
Okay,
what's the name? I'll put it on the screen.
They have it flashed by real quick. It's a Hebrew name. I didn't.
All right, so
quite
look for some
see it.
Hebrew. Look for a Hebrew name, and then we shall crush and humiliate this person. Okay, go ahead.
Okay,
Let's see. You've got this one. Is this the one?
There
The image.
that's
The
it,
image
yeah.
is not in singular.
So-
it is in plural. So in your face.
Ash.
Yeah,
help this
that's
person
really,
out.
really, yeah, that's beyond stupid. That's a singular for image and a plural for hour.
So I debated a Unitarian one time, and I pointed out that in Ecclesiastes 12, it literally says, "Remember your creators in the days of your youth." And this person went and looked at an interlinear like Bible Hub or something like that. And I praise God for these tools that people can use, but you still have to recognize that this only takes you so far. You still got to learn a bunch and
No, but
and
it
work
will
at it and so
indicate
forth.
in the interlinear that this is a.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm getting subject object correct here,
But the person
the
person
image
didn't
is
understand.
singular.
Yeah, the person didn't understand how the interlinear works. So you have a word, the noun here for image, and then you have the suffix on the end, which is our, right? So the image is singular, but it's referring to our image. It doesn't say our images. So
But he
our
says
is
right. He
built
says
into
right
the-
here. It says in our images. He says it. He says it
Well,
says in our images. It says.
Well, he's wrong and lying, and obviously doesn't know Hebrew.
Ash, does this say in our images?
No, it says in our image very clearly.
All right. Person here.
So I got a theory. My theory is this.
Ask
This
him
is
what the singular would be.
Yeah. So my theory is this. This person learned from a Dawagandist who learned from Tovia. That's my running theory right now. No, Tovia wouldn't make this. Okay. I'm going to say he wouldn't make this bet.
So this is one of Korra. This is one of Korra's disciples here who joined the rebellion.
This is my guess.
Okay, so yeah, person, Korra's disciple. I'm not sure what to do here. If the person's just going to keep posting it over and over again. So here you have it. Here you have it, Ash. That's the response.
Oh, there.
He's changed. That's a different word. Mut and Selam are the two different things. Image and likeness.
But it's the same phenomena, right? Like it's still have
the exact same thing.
a singular
He's just
term
gone to the word
with,
for likeness instead of image.
Yeah. So you've got a singular noun with a ending indicating the plural pronoun. The plural is not the noun likeness or image. It's in the embedded, subject, our, us, and so forth. So that would be like saying "let us make" means "let us makes," like plural makes or something like that. Anyway, it's just pure bad, hopelessly ignorant, not at all even close to being true. Tovia Singer level stuff here.
Yeah. Sorry, person. If you're just gonna They just crushed you. You were spouting complete nonsense. So yeah, you got to go. All right.
And that's what we are. I mean, we know this, that you and I and a dog share something along the order like 98% of our DNA is in common. I mean,
both came
we're
from the
basically
ground.
made up of the same stuff, a walking protoplasm. So what the difference is that we have a soul, they don't.
Exactly, I
But
see.
the same
All right,
Torah
beautiful
speaks of them
response.
having a soul.
Another passage that I was
Yeah, that's weird.
Tobia's wrong like on almost everything. This is the hope of Dawa. This is the Muslima that pressed Tovia on his page. I don't know if you saw it, Ash, but he titled it "Muslima presses Rabbi." She's pressing him. She's giving him serious challenge.
Yeah, I just looked it up. I didn't even get that right. Whoa, getting a horrible echo.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
My headset died. Sorry.
Very good. Yeah, I checked it out. He said we share 98% of our DNA with dogs. It's 84%. That's because we have very similar like structures and organs and so on. But it's just weird. Korra's just nodding along with everything he says. This is wild.
But also notice, it's Tovia has, he's over here speaking in a very cocksure way, right? It's like they're the obvious pagans. We've got the obvious refutation, and every single thing he said is dumb and wrong, and he's still talking with this kind of assurance of the truth, and Korra's lapping it up. Mm-hmm. The assurance is unwarranted, and I have to think that Tovia, some of these things he just knows are not good arguments. I was kidding when I said this person's probably a student of Tovia's. Tovia doesn't know that the word for image and likeness is in the singular. Tovia does know that. So if Tovia were to say this sort of thing, he hasn't said it, but if he were to say it, of course he knows that it's wrong. But I've heard him miscommunicate things about Hebrew many times. One of my favorites, in fact, last Christmas, no, it was the Christmas before, I pointed out that Tovia argues that certain passages are not messianic because they're in the past tense rather than in the future tense. Now, technically, Hebrew is an aspectual language. It either, it presents things as either completed or incompleted, complete actions or incompleted action. And prophecies are often stated in the perfect tense, which is just a well-known phenomena, the prophetic perfect, where something that is certain to happen is spoken of as
if. He just lies and says that's not true.
Yeah, but there are passages that you could go on kabad.org and see they translate them exactly the same way. They translate them as prophecies, even though in the Hebrew they're complete actions. In terms of their
funniest Tovia Hebrewism is because he's not. So he doesn't speak modern Hebrew very well either. The funniest thing was when he was talking about Psalm 2 and he was trying to say Nashku Bar, like it doesn't mean kiss, it means arm yourself. Because Neshek being a weapon, Nashku would be arm yourselves. And you could kind of say that, but then he gives this example of like if you went to like security here in Jerusalem and said, Nashku would be arm yourselves, they would have no idea what the hell he's talking about.
I have to hear what you say about something down the road here. He's going to pronounce something, and at first I'm like, what is he talking about? Because the way he pronounced it, it's possible that that's just another way of referring to it, but I'm thinking, I never heard it that way. So it's either a modern Hebrew way of speaking, or he's just making something up again. I don't know.
Point it out. I might have to do it, address it later. My phone's about to die, so I'm going to head out, and I'll try to head back in, come back in a little bit later if I can.
All right, man. All right, now more from Rabbi.
Is the passage where it talks about the Lord on the earth and the Lord in the heavens. I believe it's Genesis 19:24, I believe. Christians use this passage to try and say that we have the Lord on earth and we have the Lord in the heaven. How exactly do we reconcile this while simultaneously being monotheists? And they obviously posit the doctrine of the Trinity. How exactly would you reconcile this?
Hang on, Anthony. So she's saying Christians point to Genesis 19, and we say, hey, you've got the Lord on earth calling down fire from the Lord in heaven. Looks like you've got Lord here and Lord there. What's going on? How do we refute these Christians? Did Christians come up with that issue? Did Christians invent that?
Nope, and it's going to ruin Tovia's entire argument. The whole fact that this is not originally a Christian idea. It's an earlier Jewish idea.
Interesting. Let's find out.
Oh, do you mind if I say one thing? I wanted to actually pick up on something that Brother Anthony was bringing up, and this is the point that, historically speaking, there is this sort of divergence, and if, I think it's an important thing, academically speaking, is there's this divergence through, the kind of followers of Jesus perspective of Judaism, and then the kind of rabbinic Judaism. So you have these two different strands that kind of break off from that. And I think what you see in the rabbinic Jewish position is very similar to what I would say is kind of like a Sunni Islamic position, which is probably why you see Korra and Rabbi Singer kind of agreeing, because really I think this is the biggest point is, the rabbis, the faqirs, the scholars, these are the people who have the greatest power in both of these kind of positions, like your traditional Sunni Islam as well as your rabbinic Jewish position. The scholars kind of look at the texts and then give their own kind of interpretations, and that's what you see. That's really the kind of core position that it manifests. And I think and this creates a difficulty, because how does one then engage, a kind of a Christian perspective of the text, if we're looking at what Anthony said earlier about like how earlier Jewish scholars looked at these types of situations, like kind of God as in a sense of plurality. I think that's an important thing to engage in. A lot of people would say, well, the ancient Israelites were actually henotheists. So I think that's another thing to consider as well, and how modern positions on religion may differ from the historical perspectives.
Where do you see in Genesis 19 the Lord
He
of the
doesn't
heaven?
even know
Where do you see that in?
So let me.
Let's attack that passage.
All right.
I think I have an idea what you're talking about, but that term does
what
not.
What they try to say is
so
it reads
attack it correctly.
All right. It reads, "Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens." So what they try to say with this is they try to, again, invoke this idea of plurality and say that this Lord here, it's going to be referring, there was obviously the Lord that was raining down the burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah, and they try to invoke plurality here.
Okay, now we do. The reason is, and this again is such a tragedy for Christians, is that they don't read Hebrew. I served as rabbi of Indonesia.
Why are you grinning, Anthony?
I'm laughing because this is going to come back to haunt him.
Yeah, because it was people who definitely understood Hebrew who saw this issue long, long time ago.
5 years. Yeah. So many friends who are Muslim.
What's that?
If you're a seminarian, you're going to study Hebrew. If you're a Christian theological student, that's a part of your curriculum. And you're not only going to study Hebrew, you're going to study advanced Hebrew and Greek. That's a part of it.
Yeah, I agree with it. I've heard Tovia make this point. It's probably one of the few that I agree with Tovia on, but he misuses it. But he's right that it should be more of a priority. Christians, we send our kids to school and encourage them to learn languages, and obviously in high school they're required, but there's no push for them to learn Hebrew and Greek. Why not, right? They learn all these other languages. I understand in part why they might learn another language. It's useful to know Spanish if, in certain contexts. A lot of people speak Spanish, and companies want somebody that speaks Spanish. But that's not always why people are learning a language. They're just learning a language because it's required, right? And Why don't we have more Christians that are being encouraged to learn Hebrew and Greek, since those are the biblical languages? But Tobia's, but this tells you something, though. When Tovia tells you that most Christians don't know Hebrew and Greek, he's telling you that he knows they don't know Hebrew and Greek, which means he's telling you that he knows if he says something about Hebrew and Greek, they're going to be none the wiser. And the same thing goes for Torah and her gullible fan base. They're all going to fall for whatever Tovia says, because, you know, he says we've got the same tawhid and we're all one big happy family. We accomplished almost a utopia, right? But no, I don't know if that's exactly how he put it, but
and every one of them had a Quran in their home that was in Arabic. Every one of them. And I remember during Muslim holy days where young Muslim children recited the Quran by heart, and how everyone was so proud of them in Arabic, not in Indonesian.
But how many of them knew
language. And tragically,
the Muslim I debated, David, in North Carolina, you were up there for that. He had his 2 daughters there with him, and one of the ladies there was probably his wife, but it wasn't clear. But at one point, he boasted that his kids had memorized like half of the Quran or something like that. And I asked him something about, because I brought up, while he was talking to me after the debate, I said something, and I said, this is right? I'm looking at his family, his daughters, and like, we don't know what Arabic, what it means, right? So they had memorized the sounds. They could repeat the Quran, but they didn't have a clue what any of it meant. And so here's Tovia acting like this is a grand thing, that you could go to any Muslim house, they have the Quran, people have memorized large portions of it, but that doesn't mean that all of them, or even most of them, actually knew the Arabic that they were reciting. So I fail to see how that's significantly better intellectually.
There are thousands of schools, Christian schools in the United States, and none of them teach their children the Hebrew language, which they believe is the language which God imparted to the prophets, which is mind-blowing. So, as it turns out, when we look at the text in Hebrew,
as it turns out,
there's a unambiguous esnachto. So the text actually would read that, and God rained down on Sodom and Amorah sulfur and fire. There's an esnachto there, which would be the equivalent of a semicolon, okay? And then, so it's a stop. Mi'es Hashem min hashemayim. It's from God, from heaven. So what they've done is they've just removed a comma, the semicolon is right there. It's called nesnachta, and they don't even know they're moving it. And Christians are not bad people. They're taught this in school. But the question is, why does God repeat it here? Because now, for Americans or English speakers, this is a little weird. Like, why is there repeating that this comes from God? Why the emphasis? And the answer is very simple. Is that early on in the chapter, we see it's not clear who is going to destroy Sodom. If you look at the conversation, as an example, between the angels and Lot's family, you'll see that Lot was alerting his sons-in-law that they're going to destroy Sodom. Lot is saying, I can't go anymore. He wasn't a young man. Don't destroy Sodom just yet. So he's saying to the angels that they're going to destroy Sodom. Yet we find this emphasized that you need to know this is not like an angel just doing this. Yes, God used an angel as a messenger, and that's what we believe, that an angel is a malach, he's a messenger. Angels do what God requires of them, Gabriel, Michael, and so on. So therefore, the Torah goes out of its way to say, ladies and gentlemen, understand this very much. This was not an angelic endeavor, but this really is from Hashem. And you know what's striking is that if you go to the Dead Sea area, which is only about 40 miles from where I live, you could smell the sulfur to this day. You could smell it. It's all in the air. It's I
smell sulfur right now.
And it was, going back about 4,000 years ago, it was a place of enormous vegetation, and today nothing grows there. So that's why it's repeated. They're simply ignoring the es nachta, the semicolon. That's all.
Yeah, why are you ignoring the semicolon in the text there, Anthony?
All right, so
hang on. Let me just put this up on the screen for people who aren't familiar with what we're talking about here. Let me get this dumb comment off the screen. For anyone who's new, you have this. So this is Genesis 19, and earlier you had God says he's going to. So God appears to Abraham. Yahweh appears to Abraham, and then Yahweh says he's going to go look and see what's going on with Sodom and Gomorrah. And then it says, then the Lord, so Yahweh, then the Lord rained brimstone and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord, Yahweh, out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities and all the surrounding area and all the inhabitants of the cities and what grew on the ground. So you have God says, hey, I'm going to go check this out. And then God, who's on earth, then rains down brimstone and fire from God out of heaven. And so there just kind of looks like you're dealing with God and God. And so why would it talk like this? And
that's very.
Anyway, just wanted to put that on the screen, Anthony. What say you?
Okay, so what Tovia has said here, which even he seems to realize is inadequate, but the first thing he says is, and this is where I was wanting Ash to tell me about his pronunciation because it's odd to me. There's a symbol in the Hebrew, the Masoretic text, known as an atnach. It's a cantillation mark. The cantillation mark indicates certain information to people for the purpose of chanting or corporately reciting the Torah. And so at this point, it indicates that you're supposed to pause. Okay, so you say, the Lord rained brimstone and fire upon Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord, from heaven. Okay, that's something of the idea of what the atnach indicates. There's this pause. Now, some will say that it also can then indicate some ideas of, okay, so Ash is saying in his accent it would be a snakta. Okay, so I thought it had to be some explanation, but yeah, so if you go to seminary or something like that, it'll be pronounced atnach or atnachta. But okay, so it's a cantillation mark. It indicates a pause, and in some case, it could be relevant to how you punctuate a verse. But what Tovia asserts here, that it just means that somehow the Lord is not reigning from the Lord. This is the upshot of the atnach. That doesn't follow at all. The pause, I would argue, is actually highlighting what is inescapably in the text, that there's a distinction between the subject and the object. The subject, who is the Lord, that rains or causes fire to come down upon Sodom and Gomorrah, and the direct object, which is the Lord, from whom the fire comes down. So the Lord rained from the Lord from heaven. And as you pointed out, contextually, the Lord is on earth. He's appeared to Abraham back in Genesis 18 and announced to Abraham that he's going to have a son next year when he returns. And then he stayed behind with Abraham when the two angels left to take Lot out. But he stays behind first to tell Abraham about the coming of the child, but then also to tell him about the coming destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. But the text explicitly says that God himself, the one who was on earth speaking to Abraham, was going to follow after the angels and go down into Sodom. And so when you get to Genesis 19, the whole narrative drift is that God is now in Sodom. So that when you get to verse 24 and it says the Lord rained or caused it to rain bitumen and fire or brimstone and fire upon Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord from heaven. The contextual force of the passage in its context is that it's one person on earth called the Lord doing it from another person who's in heaven called the Lord. Now, this is where you asked me before. You said, is this a Christian idea originally? Obviously, it's an idea Christians love and we're very much at home with. But this is not originally a Christian idea. This is a Jewish idea. So here are those trusty Targums again. I wonder what it says in Genesis 19:24 in Targum Neophiti. Well, here in Genesis 19:24, it says, the memra of the Lord, again, that's Aramaic for the Hebrew word dabar and the Greek word logos, or the English term word. The word of the Lord made sulfur and fire come down upon Sodom and Gomorrah from before the Lord from the heavens. So this is how ancient Jews, those who made these paraphrases, interpreted it. The same thing can be seen in Targum Pseudo-Jonathan. I won't read it, it's just a repeat. So this is something you find in ancient Jewish sources. And I could quote others that are even earlier than the Targums with respect to this. But it's even worse for Tovia, because when you go to something like the Talmud, this isn't what you find. This isn't how this is being explained. So this is from Sanhedrin 38b in the Talmud, in the Bavli, the Babylonian Talmud. It says, the Gemara relates, a certain Menim said to Rabbi Ishmael, son of Rabbi Yossi, it is written, the Lord rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. The Menim raised the question. It should have stated from him out of heaven. So notice, here's this Jewish person, a heretic in this person's eyes, raising an objection based on the Hebrew text. And he's saying it should have said from him. The Lord rained from himself or something, but it doesn't. It says he reigned from the Lord, from heaven. Does this person know Hebrew? Isn't it a shame that ancient Jews didn't know Hebrew as good as Tovia did? Obviously, these guys knew Hebrew. Why does this guy not assume, oh, there's an Atnach there? Well, I'll tell you one reason why they don't think anything of the sort, besides what I already said about the significance of the Atnach. There was no such thing as a cantillation mark before the Masoretes put them there in the 7th, 8th, 9th centuries. Those are later rabbinic aids to help singing or reciting the text and so forth. It's not a reflection of what Moses wrote. Moses didn't write cantillation marks. Right? So here are these ancient Jews looking at a text without cantillation marks. Doesn't occur to anybody that, oh, there's this semicolon there, or whatever Tovia thinks does the trick. This doesn't occur to them at all. It's not even on the radar. So this is what the Menim says, but now listen to the rabbi who responds. He doesn't give Tobia's answer either. So the heretic says, well, where, the alleged heretic, why doesn't it say from him, but says instead from the Lord? Then a certain launderer said to Rabbi Ishmael, so this is another person giving an answer, leave him be, I'll respond to him. This is like what is written, and Lamech said to his wives, Adah and Zillah, hear my voice, wives of Lamech, hearken to my speech. So, in case people didn't catch that, what this person is doing is they're pointing to Genesis 4, where Lamech refers to himself in the third person. Okay, Lamech says, if you look at Genesis 4, it says there that Lamech said to his wives, Adah and Zillah, hear my voice, wives of Lamech, hearken to my speech. So, in other words, Lamech refers to Lamech. And so this is supposed to explain what's going on in Genesis 19:24. Notice, it's not the Atnach or anything like this. It's just what we would call today in literary terms Iliism, when one person is speaking about himself. But here is just one of many insuperable problems to this. You do find this in speech. You do find a person referring to himself in the third person. But Genesis 19:24 is not speech at all. It's not God talking about himself or anyone. It's Moses. Moses writes, "The Lord rained fire and brimstone from the Lord out of heaven." So it's Moses who's talking. It's Moses who makes this distinction. It has nothing to do with one person referring to himself in the third person. It's an entirely different phenomena, and you just don't find this unless you have distinct persons. So Tovia's explanation is a complete flop here, and so is the answer of the Talmud. The Talmud's answer doesn't give us a comparable example of this idiom that would resolve the problem. And so just remember, the Jews don't give Tovia's answer. The answer they give doesn't work, but the answer that they're giving is being given to other Jews who seem to think this verse teaches a plurality of persons. Well, guess what kind of Jews might be in view here? Maybe the kind of Jews that produced the Jewish Targums. You think these guys knew Hebrew, Tovia? You think they learned that in school? At least maybe half as good as you did? Or do you think they were maybe like heads and shoulders beyond you?
No, ignorant Christians who don't know Hebrew wrote those Targums.
He should do a team up with Hijab. That would be like the team up of all team ups, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we need the Rabbi Tovia Singer Muhammad Hijab team up, guys. We need that. Did get a complaint. Does David ever read super chats? I guess I'll take a couple here.
You blew it by reading that one.
Yeah, so someone said I'm a Muslim. Oh, no, I didn't say that. I already read that earlier, but then we had the follow-up. Oh, I might have started World War III. No, you didn't. Why does Singer talk like his jaw is wired shut? I do not know. Tovia doesn't say a word about the Dawa Center in Israel, Dar al-Islam, Kafir Qassam that recruits for ISIS. Love if Ash can do anti-Dawa lessons in Israel. Ash seems to focus on other things. Anthony will destroy Singer. Singer twist words like Momo got twisted that one magical night. What magical night would you be speaking of? As a bit of irony on the Genesis 1 thing, the Mormon interpretation makes more sense than what Korra and Tovia are saying. That's cool. I don't know why you say the Orthobros align with the Muslims and all the top Orthobros dislike Sam. Jay, Alex, David, Erhan, and Cleve all dislike Sam. I'm not saying they get along with Sam. They do.
Nobody gets along with Sam.
They do defend the idea of working with Muslims and working with the Dawa guys and helping them trash non-ortho bro critics of Islam if there's a good reason for it. They do defend that, and they believe they have a good reason.
Sam can't be used for much of anything, right? To determine too much, because like he doesn't get along with anyone, so you can't like base too much.
Yeah, you can't say, well, they don't get along with Sam. No one gets along with Sam. Sam doesn't get along with Sam. Yeah. This week's episode on Malik's and Sam's love story will be interesting. Yep, it is. They are buddy.
That's Malik's.
Really? Did God create LGBTQI? Yeah, obviously. So you have to viciously and intentionally lie to deny Jesus is God. Not a God, but one with the Father. The Bible does not give another meaning. Is Tovia trolling Muslims now? That's a plot twist. That would be funny if he's giving all these stupid arguments just to make them run with really stupid arguments. Be like, hey, I got them to say that I got them to believe that God is talking to Stardust as his co-creator. No, I did. Really, I did. You're not. I know. You think there's no way they're going to believe that. Guess what? They're out there using it. The Dawa guys. That would be funny, and he would get all sorts of cool points for that. Any of you tried to invite Tovia to a live stream? We literally just did that. I'll go ahead and say it here. Someone wants to clip this, pass on the message. Rabbi Tovia Singer, you are welcome to join us right here for a discussion. I'll stay out of it because we don't want 2-on-1 or 3-on-1 or anything else. I'll just kind of host it and say, okay, you have 5 minutes, you have 5 minutes, or something like that. Any sort of rules you want, you can let us know. But Anthony has already said he'd be happy to have a friendly discussion or debate with you on whether God is multi-personal, as Christians claim, in the Old Testament. So, don't know how much clearer we can make it there. Let's see. I was putting my wife to bed and was listening to you in my ear. She asked me what I was listening to. I said, YouTube. Then she asked, is it your favorite psychopath again? I said, yes, it is. Nice. I didn't know Tovia is contributing to the Talmud in current day. This guy would do well in the company of Dan McClellan. What do Jews think of this? I have to say, most of the Jews I hear from, now I don't know, but most of the Jews I hear from, and this could be a skewed audience because I hear mostly from people who watch us who are these are Jews who are pretty friendly with Christians. They usually don't have a very high view of Rabbi Tovia. That's what I'm saying. So I don't know how other Jews react to him and so on, but yeah.
I think he's probably, for Jews like Shabir Ali, is for Muslims.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Muslims will say, we don't take Akida from Shabir. He's not reliable when it comes to Islam, but we like him for his attacks on Christianity, right? So I think Tobia's got a lot of, high marks with people just because he attacks Christianity, but they're probably listening to him thinking, what is this guy talking about whenever he tries to wax eloquent about Judaism?
Here we have funny how Mo copied Jews to make the Quran, then Rambam copied Islam to remake Judaism, Satan's feedback loop. Also, I bet Tovia Singer probably just ignores mentions of the word by Jews like Philo and the Targums.
By the way, Philo interprets the passages like 126 in Genesis and 1924 along similar lines. It's the word. It's the word that's in view there.
When Ash speaks, the birds sing. It's beautiful. Yeah. I noticed that too. So Tovia is binary stardust, and God created him LGBT. Great logic. Yeah, he says binary. Also, why does Singer hate on Trinity when Kabbalah has like a dozeninity in the Godhead? Also, Psalm 33:6 shows the word of the Lord created earth.
Yeah, so the Kabbalah refers to these sphirot, these things, these emanations, which just sounds like Gnosticism. Mm-hmm. If you read Irenaeus's Against Heresies, he's refuting the Gnostics who had like these genealogies of things from the highest God, because they didn't want God to have contact with evil matter, so they had to posit something that did it, but they had to account for why this thing that's from God out of his very essence or being did it if it's from him. And so they, basically they've got these emanations from emanations from emanations until they feel like it's okay now to make contact between this thing and matter and get God off the hook. And they have this idea of things from God that are God in some sense, and yet distinguishable from him. And there's various directions this goes, but if that's permissible, what are they complaining about?
Very interesting. As you said,
oh wait, I was finishing these up. Let's see, Tovia the stage. Yep. Wait, Ali Dawa said we're made in Adam's image. No, Ali, that was some weird stuff. He got crushed on that one. They cut verse 27 short. He creates in his own and in God's image. So is the second clause pointless? Mm-hmm.
Yes, we made that. I think we made the observation last time. There's a threefold repetition of the name of God. So the verse that they will sometimes go to say, "Oh, here it's in the singular." It's in the singular, but it's repeated 3 times, which has to have some significance according to the school of Rabbi Akiva. You have, why does it say, so God created man in his image, in the image of God he created him, in the image of God he created them? ancient rabbis thought all these things had to have their own value. You didn't just have redundancy. Each thing meant something. And so what does the threefold repetition indicate? But as Pack Tactics is pointing out, even apart from the threefold repetition, it says, so God made man in his image, in the image of God he created him. Notice the shift. It's like God is making man in the image of God, as though the God it's referring to is a distinct person. So, yeah, good point.
There's also an us in chapter 3:22 after Adam and Eve sinned. Yeah, you've got the us right there again. So apparently that is God talking to stardust as well. It's God talking to stardust. Good point.
And there's another one in 11:7. God says, "Come, let us go down," and there confound their language. And Isaiah 6:8. Now, if people look up online, this Targum's online. If you look up the Isaiah Targum, just put in Targum Isaiah and go read Targum Isaiah on chapter 6 and just read the whole thing and see who it is that is speaking there. The one who is on the throne that Isaiah sees, the one who says in the Hebrew text, whom shall I send and who will go for us? Well, I'll tell you in case you don't go read it. It's the Word. The one who says who will go for us is the Word. It's the Memra, the same one in 126 in the Targums.
Yeah, weird stuff. Who'd win in a fight, D. Wood or Sam Shamoon? D. Wood would win in a fight against 10 Sam Shamoons. Ash Smoke, huh?
At his normal weight, or
well, his normal weight is like 350. So I don't. Yeah, but yeah, that you just get slower. See, size can be an advantage, but it makes you slower. So it's a trade-off. Ash, smoking in this scenario and context reminds me of Hijab eating popcorn in the courtroom. Come on, man. No, he was eating donuts in the courtroom. Doesn't Tovia's theory make God an idolater, by the way? Yeah, something like that. Ash out here mogging Orthobros with his cigar, Orthoduck Lips with his beard, and Tovia with his Hebrew. Dang, mogging everybody. The only thing better than a Muslim woman doing dawah is a Muslim woman asking a Jewish rabbi for help doing dawah. I know. It's classic. The blind leading the blind. Yes, it is.
Who was that? You put it too quickly. Was that that last one?
What, you mean this?
Muslim... Yeah, that's
yeah. It's Hussein, man.
I know that. Yeah, but what I was trying to, I didn't know if I should say because the name doesn't say his name. Good to see you.
He goes by multiple names, man.
Oh, that's with him and his wife.
Yeah. And he could play guitar. He could play the guitar just like a ring and a bell. Like Johnny B. Ninja Korra is so young and gullible. Poor kids. They should return to playing outside. Yeah. You see, you do not speak Hebrew or Greek, Korra. Yeah. But it's not the same God. The biblical God is spirit. How dare he say that Allah is the biblical God? It's pure blasphemy. It is pretty wild. Then there are rabbinic Jews that say Tovia Singer created his own religion and that he's full of crap. I hope they put it exactly in those words. And Jewish YouTuber Joseph Cohen of Israel Advocacy Movement recommends Rabbi Singer. Huh, interesting. Interesting.
There's always one.
There's always one. All right.
There's one in every crowd.
Well, Anthony, we've been going a couple hours now, and we've only gotten through 12 minutes of this, so I'm guessing we'll get through another point or two. And then we'll have to decide if we want to cover other parts of it. But yeah, Anthony, just so everyone knows, Anthony warned me about this before we start. He says like every single sentence he's saying something stupid, and so if we have to respond to it, it's going to take a long time to go through. But let's see what we got here.
Obviously, Christians, they're not necessarily bad people inherently. They're obviously taught with these misunderstandings of the Hebrew Bible, which is really unfortunate.
So why does the Quran call us the worst of creatures?
Another passage that I was really curious on, I wrote it down, is so Christians, not only do they argue Trinity from the Old Testament.
Oh, hey, look at this. I reached out. See, that's weird because that guy, Joseph Cohen, Israel Advocacy, when I see him, I like him because he actually goes after Dawa guys and crushes Dawa guys and stuff like that and embarrasses Dawa guys. But here Ash says, I reached out to Israel Advocacy to discuss Messianic Jews in Israel. He called me his enemy for becoming a Christian. Ouch. So that guy's always been nothing but nice to like AP and interacting with some of the Christians I know. So he might be one of the guys like, hey, if you're completely outside of Judaism, whether religiously or biologically, you got, hey, we can get along. But if you actually are Jewish and convert to Christianity, then you're especially bad. And that does sound like a position that Rabbi Tovia Singer would adhere to. Like his entire life's goal seems to be stopping Jews from converting to, like his main overarching goal seems to be stopping Jews from becoming Christians. And you see what this has led him to, aligning with the Dawa clowns as allies here.
Testament using passages like these with regards to plurality or repetition when it talks about God, the Lord, but they also argue using what we see in the Hebrew Bible as the angel of the Lord. So how exactly would you go about responding to a Christian who says that the angel of the Lord is God because of the actions that the actions that the angel of the Lord does, as well as the names or titleage that is given to the angel of the Lord?
Right. So this is a something that really is a very good question, because there's something unconventional going on in the Hebrew Bible, and that is those who represent God are called God in Tanakh, in the Hebrew Bible. Now, if you, the viewers, don't know this, it's unfortunate. It's because you were never taught biblical Hebrew. That's not part of your upbringing. But as it turns out,
Anthony, how come you grin how come you grin every time he says, "Oh, if you just, it's just sad that you don't know Hebrew. If you know Hebrew, you'd understand. Oh, this makes perfect sense, and this would never be an issue for anybody. Come on."
Because the Talmud is full of Jews trying to deal with this stuff, and Tovia is essentially calling them all a bunch of idiots. Right? Nobody with Tovia, Judaism has arrived. And the thing that gets me is, I disagree adamantly with Maimonides, who I think completely changed things in terms of theology from what Jews had believed prior to that. And I think the Talmud does that as well before him. But Maimonides was brilliant. Nobody could read the man and think he was some kind of, some guy just making stuff up and didn't have a thing sensible to say or whatever. He was brilliant. And this is true of almost every rabbi that I at least like reading. I like reading Nachmanides a lot. There's all kinds of stuff that, you read these guys and you're like, these guys are really brilliant. They're not wrong because they're dumb. Right? It has nothing to do with it. And they're very educated and thoughtful and so forth. But Tovia doesn't hold a candle to any of them, and he's basically throwing them all under the bus. Everybody prior to Tovia that doesn't have his stray ideas as answers to these things suddenly doesn't know Hebrew. And he's not saying the sages didn't know Hebrew or the medieval rabbis, but he is by implication, right? When he says this, they just didn't know this, right? Well, why are they debating these things? If it's just so obvious to somebody who's got a third grade level of education in Hebrew or something like that, he's got no respect for the rabbis.
Mm-hmm. And Zero Guest here does say something that makes sense. He's like the Muslims with Arabic. Say, you don't know Arabic, which sometimes can be true. You could be saying something and get something wrong because you don't know the Arabic, but more frequently they just use it. They just use it to derail something and pull rank and so on, and say, if you only knew Arabic, when the Arabic doesn't actually help or change or affect the argument at all. But similar with what he's saying here.
Even Jerusalem in Jeremiah 33 is called God. It literally says that Jerusalem be called the Lord is our righteousness. That does not mean, heaven forbid, that we should worship Jerusalem. Oh no, just Jerusalem is a place that reflects God. We would see in Judges chapter 2, verse 1, where literally says an angel of the Lord said this, and then I took you out of Egypt. Moses of blessed memory, our teacher, one of the greatest men who ever lived, and our chief prophet, literally in a conversation with God, where he's very reluctant to carry out what God wants. Moses was a person of enormous greatness. He was just deeply humble. And he kept explaining to God that really I'm not worthy of the task. He explains to God that, look, I've got a speech impediment, because when he was a little baby, he burnt his tongue when he put coal on his mouth. And God said to him, and this is Exodus chapter 7, verse 1.
You read that,
There's
right?
nothing even more transparent than this. Literally, God said to Moses, you read Exodus 7, verse 1, literally, God, the Almighty, says to Moses that you will be an Elohim, which means God to Pharaoh, and Aaron, or Aharon, will be your prophet openly, which, by the way, upends the whole idea that the name Elohim conveys a plurality. Was there more than one Moses? So therefore, there is a chasm here. And my heart goes out to Christians, because I want them to know that there's only one God. And that is...
Well, you might want to start making better arguments if you want to convince us.
He says his heart goes out to us, but where did his brain go?
Yeah.
These arguments are as bad as the others.
Yeah, you're throwing your heart at us, man. Just use your brain.
You and I, Korra, we would never talk this way. We would only call the only God created the heavens and the earth, the merciful one. We would only call him God, and we would never. But in Tanakh, this is not the convention, and in fact,
no, this is not correct, because Allah has his 99 names, and according to Ali Dawah, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. So you can call Jesus the names of Allah. So that's a good Muslim thing, Rabbi Tovia. You might not, but Muslims would.
Told in the book of Exodus that God is sending a malach, an angel of the Lord, ahead of you, and do not rebel against him, because my name is in him, and he cannot forgive your sin. That blows the whole thing away. Moreover, Christians love to quote Hebrews when it helps them, when it assists them. They quote this anonymous point. You made a great point of this in your debate.
You're just so awesome. No, you're awesome. No, you're awesome. You're so awesome.
Which I thought was brilliant. When you ask your opponent, who wrote the book of Hebrews, you're quoting the book of Hebrews as though this is something reliable. You don't even know who wrote it. And that was totally dodged, because Hebrews is written anonymously, and everyone knows that it was not written by Paul. But they quote it and consider it a part of the canon, the 27 books of the New Testament.
Yeah, the early church regarded it as authoritative, even though there are a couple of candidates. So there are a couple of candidates as to who wrote Hebrews. We'd be fine with any one of the candidates, but yeah, we don't actually know which one wrote it. But wouldn't he be in kind of the same boat with some of the books of the Old Testament that are officially anonymous? And so wouldn't that be the case, Anthony?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Huh,
so
that's weird.
They would argue for this person or that person. They look for somebody significant who could have written it. They see what the book indicates, as far as just like we do today. We look at a book and we see what it says, and if something couldn't have been said before a certain point, we know that it has to have been written from then on, right? And if it doesn't seem to be aware of this significant event at this point, then we say it's probably written before that. Those are the sorts of things we do. Well, Jews will look for some viable candidate within that time frame, and they'll say this person wrote that and that person wrote this. So it's exactly the same thing. But with respect to the book of Hebrews, there's this additional point that can be made, is that, first of all, it's a different kind of book than other books in the New Testament. The Gospels are biographies, right? Greco-Roman biographies. And it's very common not to put the author's name in them, though you could expect a name to be on the books, because you'd have to have some way of demarcating them. And that's why all of our manuscripts tell us who wrote them. But in the epistles, you have the person mentioning himself. That was common in epistolary writings. You would identify yourself at the beginning of the epistle. But the book of Hebrews is not a biography or an epistle. It's actually a sermon. If you look at the last chapter, it explicitly identifies itself as a sermon, an exhortation. And an exhortation isn't the same thing as a letter. It's not going to be written in the formal letter style and so forth. It's a sermon, and so the name isn't included there. But here's what's interesting. It's always been associated with the Pauline corpus, which doesn't necessarily mean that Paul wrote it, but that it is somehow connected to Paul. So this is why, in fact, look at all the candidates. All the candidates, you have people saying.
So you're saying that's why some people say it was something by Luke, and some people do say it was like a sermon by Paul. And I've always thought Apollos, because talking about him knowing about Jesus, but from reading the Old Testament, and then having to be informed by people who actually knew the history of Jesus on how Jesus fulfilled it.
Right? So you have Priscilla and Aquila coming along with then Paul. So Paul is very much involved with Apollos. So, the whole point is everybody recognized, and that's why, so like it circulated early on with the Pauline books. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's not like this book just showed up on somebody's doorstep one day and everybody said, we like this, let's make it biblical.
And Ash says Exodus 23, and multiple people pointed this out. Yeah. Exodus 23 does not say he cannot forgive your sins. It says he will not, implying he can.
Yeah. So actually, I heard that. Ash actually mentioned this to me the other day, that this is how Tovia tries to explain the verse. But notice, this is just crafty, right? He says this. Nobody's pulling out their Bible and looking this up. This is what you call the 99-1 rule, right? Where you got these hucksters who know that if they throw out lies, most people are going to buy it. Only 1 in a million or 1 in 100 are going to look it up and see if it's actually true. Tovia says this, and most of the Muslims have probably not even bothered to go look at this. It doesn't say he cannot forgive your sins. The whole point, if you look at Exodus 23:20, it says, I'm going to send my messenger ahead of you. He'll prepare your way. And then it says, he's going to guard you along the way. And there's a play on words in Hebrew. He's going to guard you along the way, and you're to guard yourself against him. Right? The idea is there's a mutual guarding here, right? He's guarding you from your enemies, but you better guard yourself, because if you sin, he's going to hold you accountable. He has the prerogative to hold you accountable for your sins, to retain your sins and judge you for them. But then the verse actually tells you why. Why does this one have this divine prerogative? It says, because my name is in him. Now, to rub Tovia's line of discussing in his face, he often talks about people who are ignorant of Hebrew or ignorant of the Hebrew Bible. But if you read the Hebrew Bible, you understand what this expression indicates. When it talks about God's name, first of all, it's not just a idle tag, right? Like my name is Tony or Anthony. That doesn't mean anything to anybody other than that's how you get my attention, right? It doesn't carry any meaning in it. Well, in Hebrew, like in Arabic, words have meanings, even names. And in the case of God's name, it's another way of talking about God himself. God and his name are interchangeable. They're inseparable. So when some passages speak of God dwelling in the temple, other passages will say God's name dwelt in the temple. God's name was there. Or you'll have the psalmist saying things like, the name of the Lord is a high tower. The righteous run into it and are saved. Notice the name of the Lord is being used as an idiom for God himself. And so ancient Jews understood this to be a way of indicating the divine identity of the angel of the Lord. And you could pick up books by the tons that talk about this from Jews. Moshe Adel has a whole book called Ben. That's the main title. The subtitle is Sonship in Jewish Mysticism, in which he's talking about the history of this idea after the time of Christ, when the Talmudic rabbis were busy trying to suppress it, other para-rabbinic groups were retaining this stuff and grappling with it. And one of the things that he points out is Exodus 23 was a centrally important verse on this. They recognized that this indicated deity. Now, let me just show you one way that just blows Tovia's whole thing out of the water here. So Tovia said he had to butcher the text. He said he can't forgive your sins. When the text says don't disobey him because he won't pardon your iniquity. That expression is only used one other time in the Old Testament. It's used one other time. And all of ancient rabbinic Jewish hermeneutic will tell you this immediately suggests that these two passages go together. This is the principle of Gezerah Shawah, where you have catchphrases or hooks. One word that's used only in one place and another only in two places. It's probably the case that these two texts are related and mutually inform each other. Well, the other text is in Joshua 24, where Joshua is talking to the people and he's telling them, me and my house will serve the Lord, right? We've made a clear decision. And then he basically says, I'm afraid for you guys. He says, because the Lord is a holy God and he will not pardon your iniquity. It uses the identical phrase from Exodus 23 that's used for the angel of the Lord. So if Tovia is right, and it means cannot forgive your sin, well then Joshua says God can't forgive your sin, which means none of us are forgiven, which means not even Tovia in his false Jewish theology can possibly be forgiven. I mean, it's the exact same phrase. Right? So Tovia gives himself away when he has to play games like this with the Hebrew text. I've got more to say.
Hebrews
but I
chapter 1 begins by saying that Jesus is not an angel. To whom, to what angel, whoever wrote the book of Hebrews, we don't know, it's a very fine Greek, says that to who else was it said that.
I wonder if he finished reading the book of Hebrews, by the way.
You should be at the side of God. So therefore, the book of Hebrews, chapter 1, from beginning to end, argues that Jesus is above the angels and he's not an angel. It will argue that Jesus is above Moses, God forbid, above Joshua, Yehoshua ben Nun. He's our Sabbath. He's our high priest. The book of Hebrews argues all this. It's a 13-chapter argument against Judaism. So your own Christian Bible says that Jesus is not an angel. So why are you arguing this? With your permission, I want.
Yeah, care to respond to that? So first, Anthony, just break down what he's saying right there, and then share your thoughts.
Okay, so the claim of ancient Jews and Christians that was later rejected by the post-Christian Talmudic rabbis, and then the still later Maimonidean Jews like Tovia Singer. Right. The position of these ancient Jews, contradicted by later Jews, is that the angel of the Lord is a divine person. It's not a created being. The problem that people have is what's reflected here in Tovia's statement. We're used to using the word angel to refer to a created heavenly being. However, in both Hebrew and Greek, and Tovia would know this if he knows Hebrew. Again, I think he does, which is what the real problem is. He's hiding this from people. He can't possibly not know this, but his whole argument assumes ignorance of this. The word in Hebrew, malach, is a word that simply means messenger. It is a purely functional term. It doesn't say anything about the ontology, the word itself. There's no ontological import in the term. It only takes on that kind of connotation in a context. So, I'll give an example that works. You could see it in both Hebrew and Greek. Think of the book Malachi and the 3rd chapter. In the 3rd chapter, God says, "Behold, I will send my messenger ahead of me, and he will prepare my way." Okay? The word messenger there is the Hebrew word malach, which means messenger or angel. Now, think about this. It probably slipped past people. Malachi, the name of the prophet who wrote this. It's literally Malachi. It means my messenger, my angel. So the prophet who's writing this is called Malachi, my messenger. Does that mean he's an angel? No, he's a human being. It just means messenger, and in this case, it's a human being. But he says that the Lord is going to send a messenger ahead of him who's going to prepare his way. That passage is quoted in the New Testament in Greek and is applied to John the Baptist preparing the way before Jesus. But guess what the Greek word there is for John the Baptist as a messenger? It's angelos, from which we get the word angel. Right? This is why in the book of Revelation, in chapters 2 and 3, you'll get Christians debating who are the angels of the seven churches. Some Christians will say it refers to angels that are charged with watching over these congregations. Others will say it refers to the pastors of those congregations, because the word just means messenger, and you need context to disambiguate it. So half the time in the Old Testament, when the word malach is used, it refers to human beings. 33% of the time, it refers to a particular figure known as the angel of the Lord, and then the remaining 17% refer to heavenly hosts, the heavenly hosts. So here's the question. What kind of being is the angel of the Lord? And why, by the way, is he distinguished from everybody else? The angel of the Lord is called the angel of the Lord, not an angel, a angel, and so forth. It's the angel of the Lord. What is so special about this figure that he's singled out from all others? Now, you heard Tovia a moment ago. He said, hey, look, Jerusalem is called the Lord our righteousness. Now, what he didn't tell you is why it's called the Lord our righteousness. The verse immediately following that says, that's because the Davidic king dwells there, right? The Davidic king who Jeremiah had earlier identified as Jehovah. In fact, the same name, it says, this is the name by which he will be called Jehovah our righteousness. So he's going to dwell there, and for that reason, the city will be named after the king. It's going to be named after him. So Tovia thought he was showing that this word can be indiscriminately used for creatures and so forth, just entirely misses that it actually points to the deity of the Messiah. He'd know that if he knew Hebrew, but or maybe he does know Hebrew and is suppressing it. I'll let people decide which. But so here's the where I was going with this. So if you look at the one of the things that he said there was, if it's called Yahweh, he says, does that mean we should worship Jerusalem? Heaven forbid. Right? So he's telling you, even though this name is used for the place because God dwells there, that doesn't mean we're supposed to worship it. So this shows you that it's not really Yahweh, right? Jerusalem, the city. We don't worship it, right? But wait a minute. The angel of the Lord is called Yahweh, and he is worshipped. This entirely undermines Tovia's entire spiel there, which Korra, again, was defenseless against. She had no clue what to say in pushback against Tovia. The angel of the Lord is repeatedly worshipped. He's repeatedly prostrated to. He's repeatedly prayed to. He's repeatedly sacrificed to. Look at Judges 6 and Judges 13. The sacrifices are offered to him. This is, in fact, one of the clearest demarcations between God and others that can be properly honored and so forth. No others can be sacrificed to, only the Lord. This is the high mark of worship in the Old Testament. So let me just give people one text to show that the angel of the Lord is explicitly identified as God, and in the same context is worshipped. So in Genesis 48, Joseph, in this case, Jacob is blessing Joseph, his two sons in particular, because Joseph had two sons while he was in Egypt, and so now these two sons are together going to be considered the tribe of Joseph, the half-tribe of Ephraim and the half-tribe of Manasseh. So Jacob is about to die, and he's going to bless these descendants of Joseph. And he says this, He blessed Joseph and said, "The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads." Now, in Hebrew, which if Tovia learned this, he would know, in the Hebrew, notice the verb is forestalled to the end. You're waiting. It's like you're in suspense. The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked. The God who's been my shepherd all my life to this day. The angel who redeemed me from all evil. You're waiting. Where's the main verb? What's going on here? The main verb is at the end. It says, bless the lads. But the verb is singular. May he bless the lads. Which means that the phrases that are used, the three phrases, the God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who's been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who redeemed me from all evil, it means these three phrases are all referring to the same agent. Jacob is praying here to that figure and saying, this was the God of my father Abraham. This was the shepherd of my father Isaac. This is the God who's been with me all my life to this day. May he bless the lads. So here you have a figure being called Yahweh, being called the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and he's being prayed to, and Jacob is asking for God to bless his children, God to bless the children of Joseph. Sound like a problem? And this is just one text.
Yep. What does this dude ever get right, man?
He's not going to save Dawa.
I don't think this dude's going to save Dawa. I think if they go out trying to use his arguments, it's like doubly embarrassment because his argument seems stupid, and they'd be using the Zionist of all Zionists' responses, which would be doubly funny.
So I forgot to point out, when you go to Hebrews 1, it's obvious in the context that when it uses the word angels there, it's referring to heavenly creatures. Mm-hmm. Contextually, that's what it means. So when it says Jesus is not an angel, well, yeah, contextually, I mean, that's exactly what I would say. Jesus is not an angel. He wasn't a created being. But if you're using the word just in its denotative sense and then determining from context what in specific it means, it doesn't mean that, right? So Toby doesn't know what he's doing at all.
Mm-hmm. Or he does, in which case it would be worse.
Yeah.
All right, let's. I guess we'll get to the end of this point and then
add this point. Why are they arguing this? We know the reason. The reason is because Jesus, Son of God, the Christian Jesus, does not appear anywhere in the Hebrew Bible. So if we would walk into a church, and neither of us would ever do that, but theoretically, if we did, all we would hear is Jesus from the minute you walk in to the minute you walk out. You'd hear Jesus more than God in most churches. So the question is, where is this explicit mention of the Christian Jesus? The answer is it's not there. So therefore, why is it not in the Hebrew Bible? The angel Lord, whenever it appears. Now, there were many Christian church fathers who reject this. Augustine, the most revered church father, Bishop of Hippo, 4th and 5th century, utterly rejects the notion that Jesus was an angel. But nevertheless, there were church fathers who did. But we don't care about the church fathers. We care about Scripture.
No, you don't.
Absolutely, and that was a beautiful response. What's interesting...
You liar. It wasn't beautiful at all. So... So a lot could be said about Augustine, but setting that aside, I mean, the whole prior history of the church involves one person after another identifying Jesus as the angel of the Lord. In fact, what's interesting, one of the earliest church fathers to draw attention to this was Justin Martyr in his dialogue with Trypho the Jew. So Trypho, together with his friends, is having a dialogue with Justin, and he records it. And what's interesting is when you look at how Trypho tries to respond to Justin, he doesn't do so the way Tovia does. He admits, for example, some of these two powers texts are actually referring to another person, but he tries to get out of it by demoting that person and saying it's not God for some reason or another. Whereas the Hebrew text just calls it that figure Yahweh or God or what have you. So this idea was early in Christianity. And furthermore, if you do the study, if you read the Jewish stuff interacting with this, you see that Jewish scholars will say the church fathers are picking this up from Jews. They're picking it up from earlier Jews. In fact, Jews who became Christian, who brought this old belief with them. This is just passing over into Christianity very naturally. And so you find it in Justin, you find it in Tertullian, you find it in Irenaeus, on and on it goes. But, gosh, there was something. Oh, there was one thing he said that I thought was funny. He says, why do Christians do this? You go into a church and it's Jesus, 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 right? Sounds like a good church to me. I wonder what church Tobia's visited. I might want to visit it myself. But Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. One of the things I've always found interesting is when you look at the Old Testament and you pay attention and you see who's interacting with the patriarchs, who's governing the history of Israel, who's there from beginning to end and is intimately in contact with them in the pillar of fire and cloud and so forth. Who's front and center? Who's the one that's constantly being talked about? It's the angel of the Lord, which is pretty problematic if you're a Jew who says that's not God, because it means that an angel has upstaged God. Right? It's the angel of the, look at the prayer we just read. The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked. The God who's been, my shepherd all my life to this day. May he bless the lads. He calls him the angel who has been with me. And if you look back at the prior history, who keeps appearing to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob? It's the angel of the Lord. And then when God appears to Moses in the burning bush, who is it, according to the text, that appears to Moses and says, I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Verse 2 says it was the angel of the Lord. Right? Tovia mentioned Judges 2 earlier. It's probably slipped by people. Tovia, for the life of me, I don't know why he quoted the text. He was trying to pretend like he was proving one point, but it didn't prove his point at all. In Judges 2, the angel of the Lord comes to the people of Israel, and he says, in effect, you've rebelled against me. I delivered you out of Egypt, just like I swore to your forefathers, the patriarchs, right? And I told you not to worship other gods and so forth, but you've done the opposite. So notice the angel of the Lord, who is appearing at the time of the Judges, is saying, I'm the one who delivered you from Egypt, and I'm the one who swore to do this to your forefathers, meaning the patriarchs. He's claiming it's been me all along. I was there with Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. I was there with Moses and the people of Israel. I'm here with you now. So yes, Tovia, it's all about Jesus, 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 or to put it in Old Testament terminology, the angel of the Lord, the angel of the Lord, the angel of the Lord.
I wonder what his explanation is for some of those passages. All right, guys, that discussion is much longer, but yeah, people would have to let us know whether they want us to keep going through that. But it does seem like a video that would take us like 8 live streams to go through, because he's constantly spouting nonsense, weird stuff. Let's take these super chats. The miracle is that you don't know Hebrew or Arabic. Yeah, that was earlier. Do you believe Isaiah, as for you, Anthony, do you believe Isaiah 40 to 55 was written during Babylonian exile by someone else? Something I need to know. Please help.
No. So it was written. So what people claim is the first 39 chapters of Isaiah were written by one figure. Verses 40 through 66, some will say was written by a second figure, but then there's a third camp that will break that down from 40 to 55, say that was the second figure, and then 56 through 66 was written by a still later figure. Now, what they're doing is they do this kind of odd stuff all over the place. They take a feature and they just assign their own explanation to it. So I'll give you an example. In Genesis 1, the term that's used consistently in the chapter for the Lord is God. It says, in the beginning, God created. So all throughout Genesis 1, it uses the divine term Elohim. Well, what they then observe is when you go to chapter 2, it suddenly starts using the divine name Yahweh. So what they'll say is, look, this is 2 different sources, two different hands wrote this, and it was being spliced together. Well, there's a lot that this misses, but it's true enough that there is this difference, but what justifies saying this is what explains it? It's also the case that chapter 2 uses the noun Elohim for God. So it's not like the writer dispenses with it. What I would say is going on is that the term Elohim is a more generic term. It's used more often to speak of God in the context of being creator. But Yahweh is God's covenant name, and so it has a special bearing in the context of the relationship with his people. This is the name God gave to his people for them to know him by and call him by. And so that's why if you look at Psalm 19, the first 6 verses that are talking about God creating the heavens use the word Elohim, but then the last verses use the word Yahweh 7 times to talk about God's special revelation in his word, in prophetic scripture. So this is, I would say, the better explanation. So when you go to Isaiah, what they observe is the first 39 chapters seem to have a certain mood and character, but when you get to chapter 40 and following, it seems to change. And they think, oh, this means a different author. Well, maybe it just means that there's now a different focus. And that's exactly what's happening. If you look at 1 through 39, it's mostly doom and gloom. It's mostly judgment oracles. But chapter 40 begins by saying, it's all over. You've already suffered enough. Now I'm going to do a new thing. So everything changes in chapter 40 because the whole focus is changing. It's now going to talk about a new exodus, a new redemption, and what God is going to do through the servant of the Lord to save his people.
Well, why not go with the alternative theory that each chapter was written by a different person?
Yeah.
Didn't think of that one, did you?
That's what I say when it comes to the 114 surahs of the Quran. They don't have a name on them, after all.
The name, yeah, you could do that. The name Tovia sounds like Tobiah. Coincidence? Oh, Tobiah, Nehemiah's nemesis.
Well, so I always say Toby doesn't live up to his name. Tov is the word for good in Hebrew.
Doesn't live up to his name. Poll, Korra or Tovia, who is less intelligent? Yeah, I ran with that, but then people complained and said they needed a third option. It's not crafty, Mr. Rogers. It's satanic. He knows exactly what he is doing. He is willfully deceiving people just like his master. It's disgusting. Well, there's one way he can prove that he's sincere, and that's to join us and explain how Anthony doesn't know what he's talking about. Come on.
Now,
you went on with Korra, who's just lapping up everything you say. Respond to an actual person who disagrees with you, man.
Now he said I said it's crafty, but it's really satanic. But that was why I was using the word crafty, right? Satan in Genesis 3, more crafty than all the others.
It's crafty. As an ethnic Jew, trust me, Tovia Singer is a moron. I hope he gets saved, but he's a complete moron that only lives to get Christians to deny Christ. They said it, and that came from a Jew, so it would be anti-Semitic for me to disagree with that statement. Sneeko dropped a 25-minute video on why he became Muslim on his second channel. He says some lies about Christianity in it. Check it out if you want. What second channel? Like what channel and what platform? Because I'd like to see that. Wouldn't mind going through that in a live stream. So yeah, someone let me know. Anthony, check the chat. See if someone mentions where that's from. So
what's
looking
that?
for. I asked
the
which.
second
Yeah,
chat.
where is Sneeko's new conversion? Because. He better be honest in this, because we remember when he was converting, it's like, yeah, then I found out that the book of the book of the Council of Nicaea was removed from the Bible. And it's like, okay, you were talking to a complete idiot and you believed him. If now, and I'm saying this because I've seen people in the past, like, what's his name? The atheist, John Loftus. John Loftus came out with 3 editions of his conversion. And basically the first version was he got caught having an affair with a stripper or something like that, and the church was really mean to him, and so he decided, well, I'll declare war on you. I'll destroy Christianity, and then he goes out, and that's basically his original testimony. By the time you get to the third edition, it's like this big, and it was all this research I did for years, this scholarly research I did, and this is what convinced me to leave. And so
I remember Loftus. That was back in the day.
Yeah, so that's why I just want to make sure Sneeko didn't pull that. It's like, okay, buddy, you told us a while back while you're converting. It was the dumbest thing we'd ever heard. If all of a sudden now it's all sophisticated and based on your careful research, come on, dude. Anthony equals more Bible knowledge than all my pastors. Yeah, why do you think I invite him on? Fix your poll, not in the Zoot sense. Third option C, neither. Neither would be the option that they're both equally intelligent. They have the same level of intelligence. What would the odds be? The panel is a boot to join the one and only true and whole apostolic church in northern Minnesota. Don't you know? Yeah, you betcha. I can feel it. I think he's talking to you, Anthony. Oh, no, he's not. Minnesota. He's doing the A instead of spelling the A. Don't you know, A? Yeah, you betcha. I can feel it, eh? Okay. I keep forgetting that Minnesota, they speak the same as they do in Canada. Genesis 31, 11 to 13, the angel of the Lord is the God of Bethel. Hey, you're muted, man. How are you going to mute yourself? And then...
Yeah, I was going to say in 11 through 13, one verse says the angel of the Lord appeared to Jacob in a dream, and then the other verse says, and he said to him, I am God Almighty, the one who appeared to you in Bethel.
Mm-hmm. That poll required a third answer. Neither. Isa, when will you give your life to Christ? Heart love you. It's like double love. Heart love you. What a weirdo. Isa, when will you join the one and only holy apostolic true non-denominational church in northern Minnesota? Don't you know, you're a boot to, Oh,
I'm about to. Not entirely sure about that.
Oh, man. Yeah. I was thinking Anthony was wrong and that we'd knock out like at least 2/3 of that. But, yeah, we didn't even get to 20 minutes, I don't think. And it's like an hour and 20 minutes long. So, yeah, you guys will have to let us know. Let us know in the comments section whether you want us to go through more of that or is that just kind of not worth it.
I actually think, I don't know, but I think they get into some prophecy stuff, and it might be interesting to see at least what goes on if they bring up, like, I'm sure she's going to want to bring up Deuteronomy 18. And I'm just interested in, like, is she going to give any serious pushback and argue that? I think, didn't Malik say, you watch, she's going to argue from Muhammad, like against Tovia or something like that.
So far, it just looks like she's, whatever you say. You rabbi, you smart, you better in everything than us. Yes, we do what you say. Yes. Yeah, why don't you, Anthony, why don't you kind of like skim through it at some point and see if there are any super interesting bits. And guys, let us know in the comments section afterwards. Let us know in the comments section. Wait, M. Leo says Sneeko's other channel is called Sneeko. Is that on Rumble? Because I know he goes live on like Kick and a bunch of platforms and stuff like that. But I'll look on Rumble for that. Because I don't know if you're talking about X. I don't know if you're talking about X, Rumble, Kick, and so on. Or you even talking about YouTube. Do you have? Because I know there's some Sneeko channel where it's not officially him. Sneeko. Let me see. Oh, there is Sneeko on here. Oh, okay. Nope. I got it, guys. Nope. No one bother informing me anymore. I have it here. Sneeko, why I became a Muslim. Yeah. So, yeah, guys, let us know if there's, especially those of you who've gone through that discussion, let us know if there's something in there that you want us to cover. We'd be happy to. And be happy to go through all of it, but there's other stuff we can go through. So it's kind of like what people think is most important. And I'm not going to go through all this stuff myself. So people have to let us know, yeah, this is really important and you should go through this. Anthony and I do think we should maybe make a couple just regular videos responding to that, just like a regular video responding to what he says about, Genesis 1. I can actually do that. I got some input from you and Ash and stuff like that. I would have already had some points to make about how stupid his response is. But yeah, so that's I can make a video of that, Rabbi Tovia Singer, on the Trinity in Genesis 1 or something like that, and then just play some clips of that. So anyway, we could do some of that, some regular videos and so on. Or we could do more lives and cover some of that stuff, but there's a lot of stuff coming out. For instance, tomorrow, everyone, is the anniversary.
Holes in the narrative.
Of the infamous Holes in the Narrative interview. It was June 8th. I don't even remember which year, but June 8th, several years ago, when the claim of perfect preservation was absolutely wrecked by Mohammed Hijab and Sheikh Yasser Qadi. They both deleted that interview a long time ago. Sheikh Yasser Qadi was even handing out false copyright strikes for anyone who even started making video responses to it. But we're going to go ahead and check it out again, guys. We're going to go ahead and revisit the Holes in the Narrative interview.
Somebody needs to make you remember how Weird Al would spoof certain songs? He did one to Miss American Pie or, Bye Bye. Well, anyway, so you the way you put it was something like The Day the Quran Died, or so I'm thinking, a song put to that music.
It should be lie. It should be lie, right? So bye Quran preservation lie, something like that. But yeah, Yasser Qadi destroyed that one, guys. But yeah, guys, that would it was multiple steps. One, there were a bunch of us who were in Christian apologetics and polemics and so on who spent years responding to this myth of perfect preservation, and people took completely different approaches. Like me and Nabil back in the day, and a bunch of we just focus on what the Muslim sources say about Uthman having to burn them, and about Muslims forgetting entire chapters, and then passages being lost because the only people who had them memorized died in battle, and verses being eaten by a sheep. We'd point out things like that. So we'd quote the Muslim sources on the sort of compilation of the Quran and so on. Then you had the manuscript guys, that would be like Dan Brubaker, and putting, actually lining up manuscripts and saying, this is different from this. This is a textual variant and so on. And then you had the people who focused on the Qira'at, the different versions of the Quran in different parts of the world today. You had people who went in that direction. But a huge shift, one of the big turning points was when Hatun showed up to Speaker's Corner with 26 different Arabic Qurans. That's not 26 different translations, guys. That's not 26 different Qurans that are the same inside but with a different cover. They are 26 different Arabic Qurans, meaning not one of those 26 Qurans was exactly the same as any of the others. They all had variants in them. They're all different Qurans used in different parts of the world. And sort of along those same lines, Sheikh Yasser Qadi got exposed, leaking from our good friend Fareed. They started calling him Fareed Leaks for a while, but he leaked some of the things Sheikh Yasser Qadi was saying behind the scenes to call him out because he's dangerous. He didn't really believe in this perfect preservation of the Quran. So Mohammed Hijab decided, by golly, I am the great one. I will fix this. I will get him on with me live to show that there is only one Quran. And it completely destroyed any hope of doing that. The cat was out of the bag. The comment section were flooded with, this is causing me to doubt Islam. This is causing me to doubt Islam. So they shut the comment section down. Then when that didn't work, they deleted that part of the interview, and then they just deleted the entire interview and hoped it would go away. Well, it didn't go away because we already downloaded it. We already had it. You can't make that go away. The internet is forever. So guys, we're going to go ahead and check that out tomorrow. We're going to go ahead and watch it. It's going to be awesome and super based. So Just trying to think. Yeah, so a couple of us are going to go live tomorrow. Jai's going to go live at 7. I'm going to go live at 8. We're going to go through that. Should be a fun time. Then we have All Joking Aside. We are praying for you, Isa. Much love for you, brother. Your name is on the prayer wall. You got that, Isa?
I got it. Thanks.
All right, guys. Final thoughts on any of this stuff? What do you think, Isa? You've been quiet most of the time here.
I'm listening. Yeah, I can understand where the connection is. It makes sense. Like I said before, I think Rabbinic Judaism, modern day Rabbinic Judaism, aligns with Sunni Islam. I think there's a lot that overlaps and connects, so I can see where there's definitely a lot of intersection. And I think Rabbi Tovia Singer has a certain kind of allyship with the Muslim community, so I think that's kind of a norm. I do think that the Palestine-Israel situation is definitely more complex. I think from that video from Jai, I think he's critiquing Hamas, not Palestinian people. In my opinion, that's my perspective on that situation. But I get the kind of humor that he's showcasing in his juxtaposition. I do think there is conflict with the Muslim community, even with like a two-state solution. I know that's more political, but I think that there is tension. So a lot of Jewish people, even on the more liberal side, believe in like the two-state solution. There are a lot of Muslims who don't believe in that. So I think that could be a strong place of contention. On the topics, I think it's important to make sure to honor the Christian perspective on this and looking at the historical elements instead of just kind of taking an outright dismissal. I think that would be a more deeper dive into it. So I think that's an important conversation. I would like to see more of that. So that's my kind of 2 cents on it.
And going back to what you were saying, yeah, I don't think he was like saying the deaths of Palestinians are good, but I think it's a little... He was saying he loves hearing the protests wherever they are, in London, in Gaza, and it wasn't just, because Palestinians have been killed. He pointed out that when they're crying, it's because they're losing, and that's better for us. And so if they're complaining and they're throwing tantrums and so on, it's because they're losing. And so that's why I love it. If they had just killed a bunch of us, they would be celebrating. So you don't want to hear celebrating. You want to hear the opposite of celebrating. You want to hear them crying and wailing. And yeah, that would be in the context of, Hamas jihadis getting killed and so on. But I think he underestimates how many people support that, because there seems to be a lot. I mean, Jordan Peterson was hounded for years now just for saying "give them hell," like on the day of the attack. On the day of the attack, he said "give them hell," and he was clearly talking about Hamas, and yet you had tons of just regular Muslims still hating on him. Like when they got the health update recently that he's like seriously messed up. Not sure we're ever going to even hear from him again. There were a bunch of people like celebrating, saying, yeah, well, you're the one who said give them hell. So these are all people who clearly are on Hamas's side. But yeah, wild stuff. Anthony, think we'll be addressing Tovia's claims again in various forms. If this is the direction the Dawa clowns want to go in, well, come on, we got to give the people what they want. If they want to go in this direction, we're happy to go along with them for the ride. And if they want to hitch the Dawa wagon to our good Zionist buddy Rabbi Tovia Singer, we're happy to go along with them for that. But what do you think?
Yeah, I was over here thinking, I don't know whether Tovia should stop making his services available in a hurry because he's only hurting the Dawa gang. The arguments that he's giving them aren't good. I don't even know if they're... I mean, I guess almost anything is better than what the Dawagandists say, but they're bad. And in many cases, it seems to me, he can't possibly not know that they're bad. When I say that he, to my lights doesn't hold a candle to rabbis like Saja Gaon, Ibn Ezra, Rashi, whoever, that's not because I think he's stupid. I think, he's probably got decent horsepower under the hood there or something. But it's not evident from the quality of the arguments that he makes, which I think speaks more to character than it does to intelligence. And that's pretty frightening, right? He's saying stuff that in many cases I just know he can't think is a valid argument. So on the one hand, I think, he should stop making himself useful to them because he's only going to get them in trouble. On the other hand, I think, it's kind of like if you've got somebody who's attacking you, let's say, just to use an analogy, let's say that they're making physical assaults against you, and there's some guy that can't fight for the life of him. Would I object if that person tried to teach this other person how to fight? I might be thinking, no, that's great. Mm-hmm. You show this person how to fight. You're only helping me, right? Yeah. So
you get, y'all get the analogy? Suppose there's some dude over here and you just know, man, this guy can't fight at all. This guy has no hand skills whatsoever. And then you have all these people who hate you and they're like, hey, we want to attack you. We're going to go learn to fight from this guy. You'd be like, yeah, go ahead and learn to fight from that guy. That'd be good. Yeah. Oh no, I'm so scared. Oh no, what are you guys going to do now? You're going to learn. Yeah, that sort of situation. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's about what it is. So yeah, if they want to roll with Rabbi Tovia for a while, they can do it. All right, guys, thanks for joining us. And wait, what is this? Hang on. We got these last ones here. Islam spreads by the sword, dies by the internet. No, Islam is very strong. And then Isa, should Singer come talk with Brother Rogers? Oh, of course. Friendly discussion.
Yeah, I think that would be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, could be friendly discussion.
I think it would be a great conversation.
Could be friendly discussion, could be debate. Is it going to happen? I predict no. But that's not coming from us, guys. That's not from our side. We are happy, ready, willing right now to engage in that discussion. But you have to ask yourselves, if Rabbi Tovia only wants to discuss this with people who are not going to be able to push back, does he really think these arguments work? I don't know. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. See y'all tomorrow.